do this by using one of the 3 available exit doors, each of which leads to the internal corridors. This will be here in the back of the room. This corridor will guide you to the final exit that opens into the lobby area on the 8th floor. Please refrain from using the elevators during an evacuation. This may become inoperable or unsafe. Instead, make use of the emergency stairwells located in the lobby area. The first emergency stairwell is located immediately to your left as you step out of the hearing room foyer. It is marked clearly for easy identification. The second emergency stairwell can be found further down the lobby, also on your left, just past the bank of elevators. Once you have exited the building's lobby, continue to proceed directly to the designated emergency meeting area, which is located on the train station across Franklin D. Roosevelt Avenue. This location has been established to ensure everyone's safety and facilitate headcount.
Thank you, Omar. Just a few logistics. Be sure to speak into the microphone. Until the reporter gets to know us all, please precede your comments with your name. That won't be necessary for the panelists because the questioner will always direct the question to a particular panelist. But if you're counsel and you're speaking, please announce yourself until everybody knows each other better. There's no need to rise. Counsel, when you have a comment, just feel free to let us know what's on your mind. A brief logistical point. I got no objection to setting aside Friday at 9 in the morning for the discussion of the relationship of the transmission spending to renewable energy integration. So wherever we are when that shows up on the agendas, we're going to defer that to the 9 a.m. slot on Friday morning. I'm going to administer the oath to the panelists, but if you're not going to talk about vegetation management, you don't have to sit there for the first hour. And so that goes for anything else. We'll try to announce the subtopic, and if you're not involved, you can go out for lunch, you can go do your homework, you can sit here and absorb it all, whatever you feel like doing, but don't feel like you have to be there. I know many of you have company business to run. Remember that we are going to have a confidential session on physical security, and that will occur wherever it says in the agenda. But I wanted to remind you that we wanted there for that physical security confidential session from LUMA, Ms. Fraley and Mr. Burgermeister, from Genera, Mr. Sorry for the pronunciation, Quinoy Ortiz, and from PREPA, Maria Santiago, wherever that shows up on the agenda. And I think for now, okay, he needs me to speak louder and more close to the mic. That's what he was whispering to me so that you didn't know. Okay, let's have everybody stand, and I'm going to administer the oath. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony that you will provide today is true, correct, and based on your own and personal knowledge, and that to the best of your understanding, none of the information you will provide today is misleading or untruthful? Please answer out loud. Let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. You can sit and you can put your hand down now. Thank you. Let me also introduce my colleague, Mr. Roger Schiffman. I will start the questioning. We'll handle vegetation management first, but he will be the main questioner for the remainder of the transmission and distribution panel. Where's Mr. Burgermeister? Right there. Nice to see you, sir. Thank you for all the hard work that you have been doing for all of us. I'm going to discuss with you for about the next hour or so, 90 minutes, you and Mr. Melendez, vegetation management. Can you hear me okay in the back now? Everything okay? Thank you. Basically 5 major questions I want to discuss with you too, and any others that want to, that I ask questions of. First, what are we looking to accomplish and what progress are we making? Second, are we maximizing federal funds? Third, Are we spending the funds, whether it's federal or ratepayer funds, efficiently? Fourth, are we performing to professional standards consistent with the Energy Bureau's requirements? And lastly, what are the likely funding needs after what we call the reset? So let me start, Mr. Burgermeister, just to get the context in place, the definition of the problem. It's my understanding that the outages relating to vegetation management have contributed to more than 50% of the outages, and it's going to get worse if we don't do something soon. That's a yes, right?
That is correct. The way we place the outages, there's direct impacts from the vegetation. What also happens, we see a lot, is in when weather occurs, that also attributes to vegetation related outages as well. But 50% is consistently what we've been seeing, and you are correct. If we do not enact the plans that we have and get the funding that we're seeking, that they are certainly going to be.
That's not my problem.
If we don't get the funding that we're seeking, yes, the problems are going to continue to be exacerbated.
Okay. I want to make sure I get clear in our minds three separate overlapping requirements that you are under right now. One is the system remediation plan. Are you familiar with that? And the priority stabilization plan. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
And the island-wide vegetation clearing.
Yes.
Okay, can you explain what's the relationship among these three things? Are they separate? Are they overlapping? And which one is the one that we're really supposed to be focused on?
So the system remediation plan, I'll start with that one, is when we first at commencement were able to look at the state of the system and be able to ascertain what we needed to do to be able to get the system to a state where we could meet the requirements of the OMA. So that was really the upfront. And I'll maybe put that, yes, there is overlap between what we're talking about here. So when we get to the system stabilization plan, what happened with the system stabilization is we made a shift in our focus to be able to make sure that we could do the actions that we needed within mainly the transmission and substation systems to get the backbone of the system as stable as possible. And that absolutely has overlap with the system remediation components there. The island-wide reset is where the FEMA funding comes in, and it focuses on a program that is going to reclaim the right-of-ways across the entire island. So you're absolutely right. I get it can get confusing when we're talking because they absolutely do overlap.
Well, of the three, which are the ones that are contributors to the revenue requirement that you're proposing here?
So the one that I think we have to focus on for the O&M dollars, which is what is in our rate application here, would be the system remediation plan and the priority stabilization plan. Those would be the two key elements. Obviously, the island-wide reset is about FEMA funding. Now the interplay, but it's when we talk O&M dollars, we're talking those two.
So it's safe to distinguish the two things like this. The dollars associated with the system remediation plan are rate dollars, and the dollars associated with the reset from FEMA are FEMA dollars. Is that a fair distinction, or that's too simple?
Yeah, I'm afraid that would be too simple. When we talk system remediation, we're talking remediation of the entire system, both the O&M funding and the FEMA funding are key to being actually successful in getting to a remediated state.
Okay, so in the SRP, the system remediation plan, you're familiar with the Bureau's 2023 order that directed LUMA to complete the vegetation management remediated phase by the first half of fiscal 26? Familiar with that?
Sorry, just trying for some clarity there on that one. I wasn't sure if that was the one that was directing us to do the 230 kV system work.
Why don't you tell me what you remember about it?
I'm not familiar with the number. I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you tell me about the elements of the phase for the vegetation management remediation phase?
Sorry, can I get you to repeat that, please?
Let me put it this way. What is it that you think you have to get done by the first half of fiscal year 26, which is about 6 weeks away?
So for the first half, for June or July 2026.
2025. First half of fiscal year 26.
Correct.
Go ahead.
What we're trying to achieve as far as the system stabilization side of it is to get as much work done we can on the 115 kV system. What we've done with that is a focus on by prioritizing the lines on the most critical. We'll get as much work done as we can is what we're trying to achieve there. We're not going to get, as you could say, to any type of remediated state on the system, but the idea is to get as far as we can on that part of the transmission system.
Can you tell us anything about the cost associated with that portion of the work?
This starts to become challenging for us because when we're talking current terms of what we're doing, we're being very challenged with cash flow right now. We may have a budget that we've been provided, but we haven't been receiving the cash that is commensurate with that budget level. So I always have to refer. There's what we would like to do with the budget, and there's what we can actually do and pay our vendors right now.
Let's start with the latter. Let's start with the latter. What is it that you expect you can complete by the end of this calendar year, by the end of the first half of this fiscal year?
Our target for the first half of this calendar year was to complete the what we call the black start lines on the 115 kV system. And if we can achieve that, those are the ones that we feel are the most critical to the system. And that was our target to complete those lines.
That's your target. What do you expect you're going to complete in the next 6 weeks?
In the next 6 weeks, we will, from an O&M perspective, we will complete zero.
Complete zero.
In that 6 week time period, yes, that's correct. We do not have the cash funding to actually pay the vendors right now. We're in significant debt to them.
You don't have the cash funding because the rates don't provide it, or because the rates provided it but PREPA didn't provide it?
I'm not able to actually answer that question for you. I'm not sure we're actually clear ourselves on that.
Who would know?
That's, again, a question that's going to have to go to somebody closer to those financial elements than me.
Well, who in your company would that be?
We could talk with the likes of our regulatory division, our finance division.
Well, would you make a note, please, Council, to see if we can find out whether the cash flow problem that Mr. Burgermeister is referring to is a problem that the Energy Bureau can solve with rates, or it's a problem that somebody else can solve by complying with whatever they're supposed to comply with. Is my question clear, Ms. Mercado? Go ahead, Ms. Mercado.
Margarita Mercado for the record, yes.
Okay, one moment, please. Answer to the question. I need to wait.
Just for the record, for clarity, Mr. Figueroa, not been sworn in.
Okay. Well, let me just get an answer to this question. I know he's going to tell me the truth. Go ahead, Mr. Figueroa.
The correct witness to address the discussion around the financial
impact on the deployment of the vegetation management work is Luma CFO, witness Andrew Smith.
Okay, and so we'll be seeing him at some point, if I recall, some point very soon. All right, thank you. Just make a note that we'd like to know as clearly as we can what the funding problem is here. So how specific can you be, Mr. Burgermeister, about what you will accomplish with respect to the vegetation management remediated phase that was required by the Energy Bureau in its 2023 order? What level of specificity can you give us about what will be completed by the first half of this fiscal year, sir?
What we can say is what we've been able to complete to date will be what we'll be able to achieve for the end of the fiscal year. And that was what I talked about on those black start 115 kV system. And I'll add to that on the 230 kV system, we did have a previous order to complete the clearing of the 230 kV within the first 3 years of operation. We have completed that. And what will also be was going along with that system stabilization component of it was to continue the maintenance, to go into a 3-year maintenance cycle, and that has also been started.
Other than not having enough money, are there other causes that are causing you not to be in a position where you'd like to be by the end of this first half of the fiscal year? Other causes?
The funding is the major player for it, and that's both on, I would say, achieving it from the O&M dollars, as well as advancing the federal funded program.
There's not a problem with vendor unavailability?
No, there is not a problem with vendor availability.
There's not a problem with supply chain delays?
No, there is not.
Strictly money?
Strictly money.
Okay. Let me see if I can ask you this question. Can you tell us, this may be too detailed for you to answer on the fly here, but can you tell us anything about the percent of 230 kV and 115 kV that will be in remediated state by the end of this fiscal year, by the end of June 2026?
The remediated state is, I'll talk on that on a moment. It is challenging to put a pin on when have you achieved remediated state. And the reason for that is that you do the initial full clearing of the line, but then there is actually cycles of maintenance we'll have to do after that to maintain it, as well as get it to a truly industry standard state, I'll put it that, which may take 2 or 3 cycles of maintenance. So it's more of a spectrum that we're going to see. We're going to see improvement over time. And to put a pin and say, this is when we'll be at remediated state, it's challenging to answer that. We will be on the 230 kV system. We already in our much better state in that, because we did that first step and we're into that first cycle. So it's progressed much further towards a more industry standard expectation of what we could expect out of a transmission right away. 115 again is just beginning. So we would be in the order of 3 years away probably from completing that first cycle of initial clearing.
What I'm getting from what you're saying is that when we all use the word remediated state, what you mean is industry standard. Is that correct, or did you mean something else, sir?
I just want to be real clear that we can, when we talk around the clearings completed on the lines from the island-wide reset, that there is significant amount of work required after that. And yes, have we taken that step? So I would either call it we've finished that initial clearing. I'm just cautious about us trying to claim a full remediated state when we're talking there's significant work still has to happen to get it to a much better spot.
Right. And what I want to be cautious about is when the phrase remediated state goes into the final commission order, I have some clue about what it actually means. So is it identical to industry standard, or is it, what do you mean when you use that word? Because I didn't make it up. You did, I think. Go ahead.
It's likely it's defined more in the OMA for us, and then it's where we get to the point where we can now achieve the expectations that are happening in the OMA. To get the vegetation system to a point where it can be meet the expectations that are within the OMA, which are the performance metrics, which would relate back to the stability of the system and safety, those types of components. That point could be quite a bit further out. That it is going to be quite a bit further out than just we've cleared the lines, done the initial clearing.
So I guess I'll note this for you and for council and for all of us. It's what we set rates for is to pay for something. We pay for some quality of service. And, you know, when I buy a house, I expect to get the house that I'm paying for. When I pay for electricity, I expect to get the electricity I'm paying for. It's a little difficult to say that we're paying a certain amount of dollars for a certain level of completion of this task without having a clear definition of what the definition of completion is. So can I suggest you think some more about that and talk to your council, and maybe in the next 4 days, we'll get a better sense of what it is that we can look for as a target to assess your performance and to assess whether what the customers are paying for is what they're entitled to. Because it's a little unclear to me. Do you understand?
No, that is clear. And in the system remediation plan, we do set a target for a remediated state. But it's that point of what truly is that remediated state mean, and we have to be. I want to make sure that we are clear on what that is, that we all understand what that means.
Let's try it out loud for a minute. This might be embarrassing, but for example, we might define it in terms of a percentage of lines around which there has been total clearance, but maintenance has not begun. That's one way to define it. Another way to define it would be in terms of SAIDI, SAIDI, and SAIFI, in terms of the resulting numbers that emerge from a certain amount of activity on your part. That would be another way to think about the phrase remediated state. Is that correct, or do you have a better way to look at it?
No, and with that...
No, meaning you'd be careful, because it's all done with transcript. If you're disagreeing with me, I want to hear it.
I do agree with you. Those are two measures that could be utilized. I probably lean more towards the second one with the performance metrics, because that's what the customers will sense, the benefits that the customers will see.
Okay. So if I were to ask you about hurricane season readiness between now and the end of the fiscal year and the end of next June, what can you tell us? How ready are we for hurricane season? How ready do you expect to be?
Is this in terms of vegetation management,
yes,
or broader?
I'm sorry. Everything
everything's
as
on
long as I'm
vegetation.
asking, until he starts, it's all veg management. Go ahead, sir.
Excellent. I'd say we're in a very good position for dealing with the aftermath of a hurricane, because what we need for that are resources, and we have contracts with resources on island, both for federal funding and for O&M, plus pre-position contracts for other vendors as well to add to those resources. So from an execution perspective, we're in very good condition. From the system, we have, again, the 230 kV system in a much better spot, and we have, again, progressed on the 115 kV system on the most critical lines. So again, it's a spectrum of readiness as far as the system's concerned, and we'll progressively get better. We're better than we were last year. We're better than we were 6 months ago. Will we be even better in another year? Yes, we will be. But I'm confident in our abilities to be able to respond to a hurricane event.
Well, I think when I heard your word readiness and when I heard your word response, I began to wonder if you were saying two things at the same time, not two things that were inconsistent, but one is you're somewhat ready so that the system doesn't fail when a hurricane comes, but you're also somewhat ready to deal with the situation if the system does fail. It's a little bit of both, yes?
It is a both there. So, when a hurricane, it's not just about the vegetation. It is the state of the system, the wind loadings and things that the system can handle. You are going to get vegetation from off right-of-ways damaging the system. And no matter how much you clear the right-of-ways, there's going to be some of that. And you have to be able to respond as well. So to me, there's two parts of readiness. You need to have the resources to respond, and you have to have those lined up. That's the readiness part of the response. And then there's preparing the system for being in best condition that you can with the resources you have and in those preparation times.
Okay. Let's start with PSP. Are you familiar with the PSP mandate?
Yes, Sam.
And where do you stand with that in terms of complying?
The one thing with the PSP was that there was a misinterpretation of some of the elements that we put in there. So I want to be clear there. There was 51 transmission line segments that were added in the PSP that were about the system and work we needed to do on the structures. And that was misconstrued as they also needed to have vegetation management. So what came out of that was that we had to focus on those 51 segments for vegetation, which was incorrect. The vegetation had a different prioritization on that. So the one thing I just want to be clear on, and hopefully through the communications back and forth, we were able to clear that up, but wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Okay.
So the vegetation was very much focused on the 115 kV system and making that progress that we needed to make on the 115.
So where do you stand on complying with the mandate now?
So it's the same as what I've been stating so far. What we've been able to do is put focus on those black start lines, which now we have most of those cleared, and then we'll keep progressing down. We do have a list of all the 115 kV system. We prioritized it, and what we're doing is working through those priorities.
Can you tell me where in the rate application is the cost specifically associated with the PSP mandate?
It's not there. You won't find a specific line item within the rate case. We didn't break it out.
I didn't think so, and that's why I asked. Is there any way to do so? If there isn't, there isn't.
It's the challenge there comes about that first question we talked about and the overlap between PSP, SRP, the federal and how the federal funding all works into that. Because of all those overlaps, it becomes quite difficult to specifically break out PSP.
Okay, let's turn to the. You're familiar with the FAST, the FAST program?
I'm familiar with it from a federal funding standpoint. I'm not the best witness to speak to that. Pedro is.
Right. This is the $1.2 billion program. All right. So let's talk about that. And it might be, I'm not sure which one of you will answer the question. So it looks like you're both, one of you is at the plate and the other one's in the, whatever they call it, on deck. Who'd you root for in the World Series?
Nope.
Don't want to say? Oh. Of all the questions I'm going to ask over the next 6 weeks, that was probably the dumbest one. Just realized. Thank you. Sorry for the outcome. It was a close call. Now, so just give us a definition of what it is you're accomplishing under this program. Mr. Melendez, welcome, sir. Thank you for your work.
Pedro Melendez here on behalf of LUMA. The FAST programs with the $1.2 billion, the intent of the program is complete a reclamation of all the right-of-ways for all the transmission distribution on the entire island. It's an Island One initiative. The intent is to complete a clearing on the entire right-of-way to what we'll call industry standards in the execution of multi-projects in various phases, I'll say, just to give you an overview of what that program is under the past.
I need you to talk a little bit louder if I can. And being from
Let me
New
get
Jersey,
closer.
being from New Jersey, I hate to say this, but I need you to talk a little slower too.
All right, got it,
Thank you.
understood.
Okay, so I understand you've got two basic initiatives here. One is the routine trimming to reduce interruptions, and the other is the capital clearing, and one is O&M that's from rates, and the other is FEMA because it's capital expenditure. Is that roughly correct?
Let me restate it back in the way it is outlined. There's the on. I'm gonna need a new mic in here. So that's the O&M in which is done what Kevin has spoken about, and there is the FEMA or federally funded execution of the island-wide clearing. Those are the two funding sources, and the two activities are, to Kevin's point earlier, and they do overlap, but they do have a specific intent on what they are trying to accomplish across the entire system. I heard from you, you want to make sure, clarify, you're talking about federal capital. Right, this is just basically a federal funded versus capital. We don't want to confuse the terms. That's why I'm answering this way.
Yeah, thank you. So, I was looking at one of the program briefs. It happens to be PBOP-07. You don't have to pull it out, but this is where LUMA was looking at the status quo and expressing concern about various elements of the status quo. And one of the things that you wrote there was, quote, no centralized team with the responsibility and authority for maintaining vegetation and managing vegetation-related processes. You're familiar with that problem?
Can you please, other than the number, could you please also provide me the name of that program brief? There are a lot of program briefs, so just if you don't mind.
I can't do it on the fly.
Not just vegetation related, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but again,
This is Margarita Mercado. For the record, we do have a copy of his testimony. If we can provide it to him, maybe he can identify the program brief and follow your questioning.
I think he can follow it if I just go over the generic point. Let's try that, okay?
I may need help. That's why I want to make sure I understand your questions, so either myself or Kevin can answer it. Thank you.
Did LUMA have a concern that there was no centralized team with responsibility and authority for maintaining vegetation and for managing vegetation-related processes? Did you have that concern?
I'm going to respectfully object. It's a vague question. Could you repeat and give a time frame of when the concern that you're referring to?
Let's put it this way. When you took over the job, when you took over the job and did your initial investigation, did LUMA have a concern? Did it have a concern that there was no centralized team with responsibility and authority for vegetation management?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and what have you done about that?
We have constructed a centralized function for vegetation management, that is inclusive of O&M functions under the maintenance side of the business, as well as the federal funding capital clearing. So it is a centralized function managed from one set of leadership that is able to give it focused direction.
And that's under your authority?
That previously had been. Recently, we've moved it over under Pedro.
Oh, well, you're a lucky person, Mr. Melendez. Thank you. And did you also discover when you took over the work that in-house employees and contractors were not using the most up-to-date utility vegetation management industry standards?
Yes, that's correct.
And what have you done about that?
We have worked, first thing is internally hiring qualified arborists that understand the work, understand and have helped develop our vegetation management program, our plan. And now we've been able to work with the vendors that we've hired and through quality control processes with them, educate, work with them, develop them and their abilities, have them uplift what they have for tooling and their own internal work processes and procedures. And we've been able to raise the quality of that work up significantly.
I want to go back to something we spoke about near the very beginning of our conversation today when you referred to the absence of sufficient funds to get the work done. Do you recall that conversation?
That's correct.
Well, what exactly are you not getting done because of the insufficiency of the funds? What activities that you would otherwise want to undertake are you not doing?
At this point, and for approximately 6 weeks, we have not been executing on any planned work on the system under the maintenance program, under the O&M funding. What we have been completing is the reactive side of the work. When we have outages, being able to respond to outages on the distribution system to get customers back on, as well as doing what we call helicopter tickets from inspections of the transmission system and dealing with those. So the reactive part we are still executing on. It's the planned side that we've stopped.
I'm switching subjects. I apologize, but I want to understand how you measure progress. Do you measure progress in terms of miles or acres of right-of-way reclaimed, or do you measure it in terms of, excuse me, miles of conductor managed? How do you go about assessing your progress?
It's the main measure is in miles, and we do measure acres as well. But the main measure that we do report on is miles.
Miles of right-of-way claimed.
Miles of right-of-way reclaimed from the federal funding program. Miles of right-of-way.
Just pull it back. Just
There's-
pull it back a little bit.
There's a sweet spot there that then you can't hear me. And then under the maintenance side, O&M dollars, it's miles of lines that have been maintained.
Said at one point, this was actually, I have a site here in response to one of our questions, our ROIs. It was, it would have been PC ROI. You don't have to look it up, I don't think, but for the record, TRS 27. And this is what you said, that vegetation management costs are benchmarked using a blended rate of the cost to perform work by asset class and voltage. Each work mile is different and is impacted not only by voltage, but also by the density of vegetation, accessibility of the work site, type of vegetation present, vendor, and other variables. And you add, using a blended rate enables the team to set a somewhat standard cost and plan for future work. Do you recall that? That makes sense?
Yes, I do recall that.
Yeah, so I want to understand this blended rate concept versus what I just asked you about was the measurement by miles of right-of-way reclaimed.
And can just clarify specifically what you want me to respond there.
Thank you. Well, which is the measure that you use to assess your performance? Is it strictly the miles of right-of-way reclaimed, or is it this blended rate concept?
It's from a performance metric standpoint, we report on the miles cleared internally. Not only are we monitoring the miles, we have different metrics that we do to manage. So not only are we giving our vendors targets of miles to achieve, there's a quality of work that needs to be completed. And then there's also a cost per mile that we're also monitoring with our vendors, and what we're trying to achieve. And what I spoke about in that specific ROI was how the method we utilize to help us set our target, it's not our targets, our budgets. So as far as what we've into the rate case, that came from that blended rate.
Just do something wrong?
I don't believe so.
Here's what I understand about what you just said, Mr. Burgermeister. In terms of your internal setting of priorities, blended rate is important. You have to think about a variety of factors, but in terms of expressing the results, that's where the miles of right-of-way reclaimed is the relevant criterion. Is that a fair understanding of what you're saying, sir?
Misstating the witness.
I'm sorry?
Objection, misstating the witness.
It's not, I'm asking him,
prioritizing.
Ms. Mercado, one moment, please. It's never a misstatement if I'm asking the witness to comment on what I just said. What it becomes is coaching the witness. So let me just say it again, and you can correct me on anything that I say, Mr. Burgermeister. This is a conversation. Are you and I clear?
I am
Right.
clear.
And you have a very good counsel who's very alert. but there's nothing objectionable with my fouling up a question and giving you the opportunity to straighten it out. So here's my understanding, and I'm just asking you to get it for us as clearly as I can. There's two different things that you do. One is that you come up with priorities for where the work should go, and in coming up with priorities, you use some concept of a blended rate. That's my understanding. You're going to correct it. And the other is you have to measure your output, and you measure your output in terms of, for example, miles of right-of-way cleared. Anyway, that's what I'm taking away from this, and I'm asking you to do the best you can to straighten me out. Go ahead, sir.
The measuring of the output, those as I talked about before, miles cleared, quality that the vendors are providing us. It's not helpful if we have to go back and have them do rework on the system. We want them to get it cleared properly the first time through. That's the most cost effective. And thirdly, we do expect our vendors to not, they need to manage costs while they're providing us that quality work. So those are the three main measures that we measure internally. Externally, we report the performance metrics, and that is the miles cleared or acres cleared. And where we really use that blended rate that I talked about, again, is about forward projections on our budgets, and making our plans going forward. So how many miles we believe we can clear or maintain on the system, and with the dollars that we have.
Thank you. Are you finished?
Yes.
Thank you. I have an odd thought that I want to check with you. One of my colleagues raised this question with me. Is it fair to say, and again, this is why I'm asking you, that using the federal funds to accomplish certain objectives as opposed to ratepayer funds, using the federal funds ends up being more expensive because of all the overhead and bureaucracy and efforts you have to make to get the funds and satisfy FEMA that you're using the funds appropriately? Is that a correct understanding of the situation? Is that your area, or is that somebody else's area?
Objectively,
Yes, Ms. Mercado.
respectfully, it's beyond the scope of his direct testimony in this proceeding.
Okay, well, he can say that. Is that something you don't know anything about?
Yeah. I'm not close enough to the details of the federal funding. I can talk more about the interactions between the federal funding and the maintenance, but on the federal funding side, I probably won't be able to answer that for you.
Okay, Ms. Mercado. Please, yes, sir.
How much costs a mile using local fund? How much costs a mile using federal costs?
So
You are the one in charge of this process, so you maybe had an answer for that.
and I do have an answer for that.
What is the answer?
One of the things we have to be clear on before I answer that is that what we're doing in the scope of work of the federal funding is different
It's different.
than what we're doing in the maintenance work. So first have to caution that. So
Sure.
when you see the differences there, and I'll take the moment to help explain that. The maintenance work is about working ahead of the federal funding clearing program. And what we do is we take a worse performing feeder and that needs some work, that's problematic for our customers, and we will do an assessment of that line, and we will pick out the worst spots along it, and we will clear those spots, but we will leave everything else on the line. So when we talk about miles cleared, what we're really trying to achieve with the maintenance is more of a 12 to 18 month fix the problem short term for the customers, where there's a federal funding is going to come in, is going to clear end to end, widths side to side, everything, trim back the trees on the edges, take care of the hazard trees that are out the right of ways, do all of that all the way along it. So we can't compare those two numbers. Correct.
But if you had a choice between executing a particular activity with ratepayer funds or with FEMA funds, would you or anybody who knows from LUMA have a preference in terms of cost effectiveness?
Again, the cost effectiveness to me is less about is it federal funding or O&M funding. There what is exactly is that last question is we've gotten down path that doing it on the O&M funding and the processes there is way cheaper than doing it federal funding. It's that I don't believe that. It's different scope of work that are driving the major costs associated with it. So I think it comes down to if we have federal funding available to do that work, we should be doing everything we possibly can to try and make use of that federal funding.
Okay. Can you talk to me, or who can talk to me about, with respect to the 1.2 billion, where we stand on what's been applied for, what's been received, and what's been spent? Who would that be? Would that be Mr. Melendez?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So let me get a feel for this, please. With respect to the 1.2, what is it that you have applied for so far?
So in general, the 16,000 miles, I'll use that as a rough number of 16,000 miles. We have already submitted for and applied completely detailed scope of work for 5,000. And I'm using rough numbers because I don't have the numbers memorized, but around that number, we'll continue fitting that pipeline. Of those, we have roughly 1,300 miles, what is called obligated, which means that we're able to work on those in 5 different regions for distribution. In the transmission side of the operations for those lines that are 115, we have 4 lines that were recently obligated. Work has not begun because we are ensuring that the areas to clear, as we're discussing here, are validated through the process. You mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, let me repeat back. Part of your question was in regards to what has been accomplished. Is that was part of your question?
No, but I'll be glad to hear the answer. Go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for the opportunity of saying that. In those that I just mentioned, this year we have completed 302 miles of cleared miles, and probably double that or more in what is called assessed miles. And
What was that word, please?
assessed miles, which
Yes.
means I think I'm going to help a little bit follow on the question you had before for clarity. In the FEMA process for ensuring you do a full reclamation, you assess the miles and determine the entire scope, and there's expenditures associated with that as part of the process to execute and then verify. So there's dollars that go towards that activity or assessing the miles that you're going to clear to be able to execute in accordance to the obligation of the miles in that particular region or area. From there, then you go into the actual execution, and that's what I just spoke, that since the most recent obligations in around May timeframe, we have completed, including some of the miles in San Juan, I'll say to 302 miles roughly.
So one of my colleagues told me that of the 1.2 billion, nearly half remains, and here's where their comment became unclear, either unformulated or unobligated. Do you have any comment that you can help with that, please?
I can work through the actual math with you, but I'll provide you, I think, some context that will help you with this, if I may. That's what I mentioned, that we had submitted 5,000 miles or more on the obligation processes, for which 1,300 are only obligated. So if your question is how much is available for execution, is 1,300 miles through working capital advances and the specific processes on the FEMA. So there's more lines to be obligated, and there is what I call a pipeline of projects that are in the queue, and there's more coming. But there is sufficient sufficient submissions of detailed scope of works for us to continue with the flow, but they are not obligated.
So what has to happen to make the rest of the 1.2 billion flow into LUMA's hands to get the work done? What has to happen?
We need to continue advancing the obligation process.
Right. And what are the details that are not happening right now that need to happen?
So from a LUMA perspective, I want to share what LUMA has responsibilities for. Let me start there. We are continuing working with FEMA and the appropriate agencies to continue answering questions if there are any. But there is a process through the FEMA, which at some point we'll get through that has some gate stages, and we are doing everything we can from a LUMA perspective to get those through that process. From our side, from LUMA, we remain committed to continue detailing the scopes and providing submissions and providing appropriate clarity to execute the work accordance to the grant.
So when we get to the federal funds panel, be with us again.
Yes.
To discuss the details on that. We'll leave it for that to get a better sense of the interaction among the various companies and all the moving parts, so that the commissioners have the best understanding of who is doing what and who is not doing what. But we'll stick with vegetation management today and worry about the flow of dollars when you come back. Are you looking forward to that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so am I. Thank you, sir. Well, I won't be asking the questions, I don't think, but we'll see. Thank you for that, Mr. Melendez. Sir.
This Commissioner Ramos, regarding the $1.2 billion for the vegetation clearing, there's two buckets, or at least that I know of, there's two buckets of federal funds. The global damages, what you call the FAST, or the FAST projects go into, and the hazard mitigation bucket. What percentage of the vegetation clearing is coming from the hazard mitigation portion of the?
I would like to share. I don't have on top of mind to be able to share, but we're working through the process to, as much as we can, to actually qualify it under the hazard mitigation portion of the grant. But I don't have that number right top of mind, and we can follow up on it if I may when we discuss.
But essentially, it's 100% hazard mitigation.
Understood,
right? So what's the criteria that you use to say this portion of this project is going to be hazard mitigation, and the other one's going to claw into the FAST bucket?
Can you repeat the question? I'm trying to understand how to best answer your question in regards to this.
So there's a limited amount of federal funds
Yep.
to reconstruct the grid.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as we don't use the hazard mitigation portion to do vegetation clearing, we're going to have less funds to reconstruct the rest of the grid. So my question is, and you're saying that you don't know what percentage or how much it's actually going to end up being hazard mitigation. So my question is, what criteria do you use to, out of the projects that you already have obligated for the vegetation clearing, what's the criteria that you use to move X percentage of that cost to hazard mitigation?
I'll restate just to give you because I don't have the expertise and the numbers in front of me. I would like to get the opportunity to see what I could answer that from what I have shared so far. Because I'm going to go off of memory. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. I respectfully say so. But from an execution perspective, I'm going to go back to the questions on vegetation management. We continue working with FEMA to ensure all and any project that we're executing is properly allocated, whether it's hazard mitigation directly to the FAST, to ensure we maximize the use of the $60 million plus the 1.2 on vegetation. But at this moment, I don't recall, so I just respectfully say we can discuss that FEMA during the FEMA session if that's an ask, because I don't have it in front of me right now.
So now I'll finish with this. Categorically, you can say now that a portion of the $1.2 billion of the vegetation clearing is going to go towards the.
If we can make a note, Council and Mr. Melendez, to make sure that we get that information at the federal funds panel.
Yep.
And I appreciate your attitude toward giving us answers. So thank you.
No, thank you for that consideration.
Yeah. Ms. Valle, you had a question, ma'am?
Yes, it goes to your point. I just would like to establish a procedure because there are some questions that we have identified that will be answered either at a later stage or some definitions that LUMA has stated could provide later. And I just want to make sure that that we have a plan or a procedure to identify those. I don't know if there's going to be a minute or what way so we can monitor and make sure that those questions are answered either in writing, in a future panel.
Thank you, Ms. Valle. So here is the answer that I think I mentioned in a prior order, but let's see if that's responsive to your question. Number one, if it's in the nature of what we would call a mid-hearing request of information, the procedure that I described is something called late filed. That's a word I first learned in Connecticut about 30 years ago, and we hope not to have too many of those, but we'll have a late filed exhibit, and it'll have a number that begins with 600. And I haven't identified such an item yet because right now we're making a note to defer certain things to the federal panel. But if at some point you feel nervous that that isn't going to happen, step up and we'll actually call it a late file. But right now I'm operating somewhat informally. Does that answer your question, ma'am? Okay, what's the other part, ma'am?
You hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
No,
Now I
okay.
can, yes.
I just want to make sure how we are going to monitor the questions that are being deferred for the federal funds panel, for instance.
Well, I could tell you that I'm memorizing them, but that would be false. But I'm seeing Ms. Mercado make a note, and I'm seeing Mr. Melendez making a note. Oh. Right. Does that work for you? Go ahead, please.
Could we agree that the person that's going to be, I'm making notes, but I just want to make sure that we have an official document that hopefully could be shared at the end of each hearing so we can monitor those.
Well, let me give that some thought. Ms. Mercado, do you have a comment? Go right ahead, and then we'll continue.
No, I agree. I'm taking notes and the witnesses taking notes, so I don't see any issue with this broad topic, and the commissioners can ask the questions on the topic. So maybe we flag the topics, not necessarily specific questions.
I hear what Ms. Valle is getting at. Let me check with one of my colleagues during the break and see if we can't get something that I'm responsible for, so that because you're looking at me rather than somebody else, and I'll see what I can do that somebody makes a note of particular items so that at the end of the day, we can review them and make sure nothing has gotten lost. Is that what you're asking for, Ms. Valle? Okay, I'll do the best I can at the break, all right? And meanwhile, everybody help out. You got that, Mr. Melendez?
I got it, sir.
Okay, thank you. Can we continue?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Some questions.
Yes, sir, please.
This is Commissioner Torres. I think we all agree that Puerto Rico has a problem with reliability. And I understand that vegetation is 50% the cause of that reliability, if not more. So I was very surprised because this is the first time I hear that vegetation program, LUMA has stopped the program. So I know Scott mentioned in the future 6 weeks, and you mentioned there's no program. Is that correct, Kevin? Did you say that?
What I was referring to was that through the funding constraints that we have, we've been unable to pay our vendors at the rate that they need to be paid at for the work they're doing. So we had to slow down the work that was happening. So we haven't completely stopped the program. What we did do is we have stopped planned work on the system under O&M funding, under state funding. We are continuing with reactive work, so dealing with outages directly and problems on the system that could cause an immediate outage.
Okay, and you mentioned,
So you already have that budgeted. You're talking about that PREPA is not paying you certain amount per month according to the budget. That's what you're saying. There is a difference between these two statements.
Correct. We don't have the cash.
Yeah. Okay.
well, that's my second question. Program. Because this is something really important for the people of Puerto Rico. And this is the first time I hear that the program is partially being done now because of lack of, as the president said, not lack of budget, because you have the budget approved by us, of lack of real money getting into the system.
Our plan was to stop the planned work for 3 months. That will take us to the end of December. Then our intentions are to restart the work, because we will now have caught those vendors back up by not spending money. We were able to pay them money and I should say cash. And we believe by end of December, we'll be at the position to be able to start that work again. Now, that is a short-term solution. If the overall cash issue and funding into our accounts is not resolved, we'll start to bleed again.
How much money do you need to do the full program, to commence the full program again?
And I don't have exact numbers, but we were about $20 million in debt to our vegetation vendors.
How much? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
It's $1 million. Yeah.
And my other question is, does this start program that we're having now for lack of funds, does that increase the cost, the future cost?
Stopping the maintenance work. Again, I want to make sure it's clear because we got a stop-start problem with the working capital advances too. And in the O&M side, as far as starting and stopping this work, it won't be a cost increase, but there will be some challenges in starting up again, being able to get the resources back.
So I know we approved 50 million for the fiscal year 26 budget, and we approved 24, I believe, with 24 additional million for the provisional rate. So it's 74 million. So what you're saying is that's enough for LUMA to do the total program and increase reliability?
No, that's not what we're saying. In fact, what we put in the rate case is an ask for 125 million of professional services. So that's for the contractors, plus about another $4.5 million for internal costs. So about $130 million. That's what we believe we need to do both an upfront maintenance program that is brings benefits to reliability for customers, as well as does a very, very critical component of maintaining the system properly after the federal clearing goes through. And that's a very critical point. That maintenance has to happen. If we do not do that maintenance and maintain the system afterwards, we put those hazard mitigation, federal funding dollars at risk of not being able to either not because we're walking capital advances, it's not reimbursement, but potentially to have them revoked. We have to maintain the system afterwards. And that's where we've done the analysis of. We need that $130 million vendor and internal costs to be able to execute on the program, maintain and sustain the system after the clearing.
Okay, definition question. I know what black start units are, but I don't know what you mean by black start transmission lines.
Those would be so a black start process. You have to interconnect different nodes in the system to be able to follow through with the black start process.
But is that the 115 kV line? Is that the 230 line?
Some of both. The 230 kV system has already had that initial clearing into maintenance program in a much better state. So the reason we're focusing on the 115 kV black start is because the 230 has been done already.
Okay. It's just that I believe that black start transmission lines are top priority.
Correct.
So, all right. Thank you. No more questions.
Mr. Burgermeister, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, I'm just, well, you tell me. You're familiar with the distinction between the optimal budget and the constrained budget?
I am.
In this area of vegetation management, if I understand it right, under the constrained scenario, somebody from LUMA has told us that somewhere around 3,100 distribution miles and 729 transmission miles would be deferred. Are you familiar with that? A large amount is going to be deferred. Let's just put it that way.
There is a statement in our SRP that does that. I think it's not exactly correct. It doesn't sound right that we'd be deferring up to 4,000 miles in the constrained case. It should be less than that. What we're doing what we did between the optimal and the constrained was, I mentioned the 130 million is what we've applied for in the optimal in FY26. What we applied for in the constrained in FY26 was about 75 million. So it was about 70 million, a little over 70 million of vegetation contractor vendors costs, and again about 4.5 million of internal costs to get us to about 75 million. The second year, FY27, that rises up to the 130 million. And on the optimal case, it's at the 130 million, then just escalates by inflation from there, from an inflationary factor. So in the constrained case, there's just the first year that has a reduced amount. And we're targeting the 130 million will allow us to put our hands on, from a maintenance perspective, on 4,000 miles a year. So you can understand why I think that number's not quite right. If we go down from 130 to 75, we're not going to lose 4,000 miles. It's going to be a fraction, be more like 1,500 miles.
Here's where I was going with that question. It was actually a different question I was headed toward, which is, what can you tell us about the effect on reliability, on the effect on safety and SAIDI of the deferral? Because that's the biggest question the commissioners have to make, is the trade-off between cost to ratepayers and service performance. What can you tell us about the effect of the deferral, sir?
It will have an impact on reliability, at least on the quickness to getting to a better reliability, because in the second year we will go up to the larger amount, so it will delay that progress. What we will do when we reduce to the 75 million in the first year in the constrained budget is we will essentially do the same level of maintenance, what I call the upfront of the federal funded maintenance work, similar to what we're doing right now. But we will be increasing on the back end the follow-up maintenance for the work that's being completed. In the optimal case, we will be able to increase the amount of miles that we're doing as upfront maintenance, and that is things that customers will feel directly. So I don't have exact numbers on the SAIDI and safety impact of one to the other. I believe we had calculated them. They're in the order of for the SAIDI side of it, probably in the 10 to 20 minutes, and on the safety side, it'd be under 0.1s to 0.2s in that type of range. So those are just ranges I'm going to give you in the ballpark. Those aren't the exact numbers, but it'd be in that type of ballpark.
One moment, please. Council, did you have a question, comment?
No, I was just going to state procedurally, there is an ROI on this that has been marked as an exhibit by the Bureau consultants. I can read the number if it helps you, or after we finish the questioning, we can read them for the record.
You could just give the citation.
Yes.
Let me ask were you finished?
No, I can give you the number. Sorry.
You want to give it to me now?
No, if you want to, I'm prepared to do so.
Okay, if it's not a delay, yes.
PC 516.
Okay,
Exhibit.
thank you. Is that it, ma'am? Let me ask a question of logistics. Who has questions on vegetation management among council? Does anybody, is it Nat Boney? And what's your estimate, sir? Okay, anybody else? Vegetation management questions? Just want to manage the time here. Give me 1 second. Mr. Nat Boney, would you like to go now? Or do you want to? I know that. I got a lot of discretion, but I'm asking you, are you ready to go now? All right, go right ahead. And then I'll look at my notes and make sure that we use the time as effectively as we can. And would you introduce yourself so that the reporter knows who you are and whom you're representing, please? One second, I have a question.
Got it now. Is that better? Okay, thank you for pointing that out. William Natbany from Cadwallader, Wickersham, and Taft, representing Assured and speaking on behalf of the intervener bondholders. So, Mr. Burgermeister, you were talking about before with Mr. Hempling a program brief for vegetation management, correct?
That's correct.
Were you involved in the drafting of that document?
Not in the initial drafting of it, but subsequent versions of it, yes.
So you have reviewed it
Yes, I have.
and you have familiarity with what's in the program brief for vegetation management?
I am familiar with it, yes.
And in that, the program brief discusses some of the potential impacts of the constrained budget versus the optimal budget, correct?
That is correct.
And in that program brief, you basically say that application of the constrained budget will result in deferring certain activities and introducing certain risks, including an inability to establish a consistent maintenance cycle, right?
Correct.
But you don't identify any of these risks as likely to occur, right?
If we did reduce the funding for the maintenance programs, yes, they are likely to occur.
Okay, you don't say that in your program brief, do you?
I can't speak to specific words that were put in there, no.
Okay, well, let's pull up Luma Exhibit 6.14 and let's go to the third page. You have a screen in front of you?
Excuse me one moment.
Sure. Do you recall indicating in the program brief that even under the constrained budget, quote, key milestones will be achieved?
That is correct. That's how we've designed the constrained budget.
Okay. So you also have stated in your operations testimony that to develop the constrained budget, you reviewed key O&M initiatives that are in various stages of implementation and identified those or portions thereof that could be delayed, right?
Correct.
And by that, you meant taking more time to build the program up to full functionality, but not to the point of cutting so deep as to jeopardize successful implementation, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Those were the program brief's words, right?
I believe is actually in my testimony.
Okay. So in fact, the program brief and your testimony indicates that even under the constrained budget, you're not jeopardizing the ultimate success of implementation of the program, right?
No, because the design of the constrained budget was to eventually to what we could initially lower down to, with the view that we would eventually get to the optimal budget.
So you would agree that there is a difference between delaying activities rather than eliminating activities.
Yes, there's a.
Right.
I agree.
And what this constrained budget does is potentially delay the ultimate successful implementation, but not prevent it.
That's a fair assessment on it. And of course, when you delay, you delay the benefits as well.
That up yet?
What was the exhibit again, please?
It is exhibit 6.14.
Okay, exhibit
Third
6.14. It'll come up in a minute. If I may mention to council, since time constraints will be following us every single day, cross-examination that does little more than have a witness repeat what he already put into his direct testimony or is an exhibit is not as productive as getting cross-examination that produces new information. I don't mean this as a criticism at all. I just want everybody to take as much care as they can to use time as wisely as they can. And that's really all that I mean to say. And let's get that exhibit up and then we can continue. We now have the exhibit up, but I'm not sure that Mr.
The third page, the section that says impact of constrained budget.
Do you have it on your computer, sir? Do you? Okay, please continue.
Are you there? Okay, I'm looking at the paragraph that says impact of constrained budget. You don't, in this program brief, quantify the likelihood that any of the risks involved would occur, correct?
Other than we did a attempt to, which we already talked about, the miles that were stated there. That was the limitations of the quantification, but we did talk about, obviously, about what areas could be impacted.
Right, but you didn't quantify on a percentage basis the risk of these things occurring, correct?
No, we did not.
You didn't say there was a 50% chance or a 5%.
He just answered that, Mr. Netboni.
Okay,
Continue,
thank you.
please.
That's all I have, Mr.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your cross-examination. Mr. Gonzalez, now I'm going to be asked by somebody to rule on whether you can simultaneously be a panel member and a questioner. So I need to think about that for a second. Isn't that right, Ms. Mercado? Let me hear your question, and if I like it, I'll ask it. Mr. Gonzalez, go ahead.
I'm just asking Mr. Burgmeister, based on the statement that he said that he was hiring more arborists, whether those arborists are arborists licensed by the Department of Natural Resources. As an arborist practicing in Puerto Rico needs to have a license, be licensed by the Department of Natural Resources.
Argumentative.
I'm sorry?
Objection.
What's the objection,
The
ma'am?
Argument and lack of foundation of the
Okay, well,
record for the statement.
Thank you. You keep us alert, Ms. Mercado. Just keep doing that. Mr. Burgermeister, let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with the process by which arborists are hired by LUMA?
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
Okay. Do you hire licensed arborists?
We hire at field tech levels generally.
What does that mean?
That's a level below below the arborists that report into the arborists. And then we go through the training with them. We have difficulty finding actually qualified arborists on the island.
Qualified meaning licensed?
Yes, licensed.
Okay.
I'm a licensed arborist.
Okay, that's very good, Mr. Gonzalez. And I asked a question that I was very interested in asking, and now I'm going to continue my own questions. So thank you very much, sir. Ready, Mr. Burgermeister? We're going to try to finish this up by 10:30 and take a break, if that's okay. Try to take a break at an hour and a half every day because it's a warm room now that everybody's here. All right, Mr. Burgermeister. Well, it happens to be still in this exhibit 6.14, but I think you can remember this. There's a reference to a, quote, field-enabled IT tool to manage vegetation work. Are you familiar with that concept, sir?
Yes, I am.
Just tell us how this tool works. What is it?
This is not a tool that we actually have functional at this point in time. It's something that we're trying to get to. But basically, it's a work management, system management from a vegetation perspective. So similar to an asset management system that you would have for the equipment. It handles, you can put the inventory of vegetation that you have on the right of ways. It'll monitor, if you're utilizing LiDAR, you can input that data.
Using what?
LiDAR, so that's utilizing.
What is that, an acronym?
Yes, it's an acronym. So it's, and don't ask me to actually say all the words to it, but yeah, it's from a source like a drone or a helicopter, you can emit light and it will measure the distances and clearances and things like that.
LIDAR. I just want to make sure it's in the transcript.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So I continue.
Sorry, I'll have to just take a moment to reset myself there. Can you address the question I was trying to do?
Asking you to describe what you call the field-enabled IT tool. You're doing great.
And we've been progressing that progress on that element. As you said, we're not there yet. We're having to still utilize spreadsheets, other systems like Survey 123, which we use for asset management for collecting data. and alternatives there. So that's still on the progression list.
Give me 1 second, please. This same exhibit, 6.14, happens to note that clearing costs are significantly more expensive than originally estimated. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do recall that.
Estimated by Luma?
Correct.
What are the major cost drivers that are responsible for the differences in the estimates? Or the differences between the estimate and what you're observing, cost drivers?
Yeah, the main impacts have, we've found more on the distribution areas. And that is because we can run into many situations where the right-of-ways are in backyards. So access is a problem. Very large trees that have been growing for years and years. And the other part of it is when you're in a lot of the distribution system is in a urban environment, so you're dealing with the traffic and all those other complications that come along with it. So it is mostly on our distribution side where we found those challenges to be fairly significant.
The main challenge being access.
Yes.
What about the disposal?
Yes. Again, we can take care of disposals. What does become problematic with the disposal side of it is, again, when you talk the backyards and you bring a large tree down, now you have to get all of that material out from the backyard and dispose of it. So similar disposal side is that access issue.
Availability of labor?
Initially, yes, I would say that after commencement, again, it wasn't about that we couldn't get the resources. We were having trouble getting the resources that had all of the skills to be able to do the work we were asking to do at the quality we were asking to do it. So it took time to build up that qualified, knowledgeable resources. But we're there. We're there now.
Do you use different labor for the federal funded work as opposed to the ratepayer funded work? Is there a skill difference between the two, or is there overlapping?
No, there are. It is the
subject, and then we'll almost be done. Just update us. What has been the work that? Where are you at in terms of relating to municipalities, putting them under intergovernmental contracts, and using their resources? Where are you on that topic?
Currently, we are working with both the Mayor's Association and the Mayor's Federation. And developing those agreements that you just mentioned, those intergovernmental agreements, and what the scope of work that we can utilize them for. So we're in that process yet of back and forth and developing what those agreements could look like.
Well, I know that. That's why I'm asking about it. Who's in charge of that program?
It is being driven from our group who deals with our key accounts.
With what? Your key accounts?
Our key accounts. They do the the mayor relationships and are some of the key contacts with them.
So have you finalized the standard agreement?
It's not fully there. It's actually sitting. We've developed our draft of it. We have it with the Mayor's Association and Federation right now for review.
Well, are they hurrying or are they taking their time? Do you know?
I don't know.
Well, who knows?
Again, our key accounts individuals are the ones that are driving that. That is going to be getting the mayors and the municipalities involved is actually a key part of our strategy going forward. When we talk about the $130 million, part of that can be utilized. What is critical there, and I talked about this before, maintaining the system after the federal clearing is completed.
I understand that.
Super important.
I'm trying to get some information.
And this is something that the municipalities can really support us on.
Okay. I need to get some sense that we're doing everything we can to make these things happen fast, and I'm not getting that sense. Do you have agreements in place yet?
We don't have any agreements in place yet.
Right, no agreements in place, and you don't have a standardized agreement yet either. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're very close on it.
I'm sorry, Ms. Mercado, did you have a comment?
Yeah, an objection.
What is the objection?
Ask and answer.
I'm the hearing examiner. If I blow a minute here and there, it's going to happen. I'll do the best I can, but thank you. Thank you for that. Sometimes you can ask the same question and get a different answer. You're a cross-examiner, you know that. All right, Mr. Burgermeister, try to give me, if you hear me ask the same question again, give me a different, I'll get in trouble with Ms. Mercado, okay? All right, next question. You really do want to see this lower cost approach implemented. You seeing any resistance anywhere?
No, I wouldn't call resistance. No.
Well, what would you call it?
It's we're starting something that's new for Luma and the relationship with the municipalities. So maybe reservation on progressing it forward. If we had long-standing relationships with the municipalities that have gone back years, it may be something that could progress quicker.
Well, is there something about, are they concerned that you're not paying them enough? Are they concerned that they don't want to be seen as interacting with Luma? Is there any of that going on, or is it just bureaucracy?
Yeah, I don't. Sir.
No problems that you can identify that maybe the Energy Bureau can help with?
Not that I have firsthand to tell you right now.
Okay. Is Mr. Cow here? Did I pronounce that correctly? The ICSE witness? Okay. Are you familiar with his testimony where he asserted that, excuse me one second. Are you familiar with his expert witness report where he asserted that Luma has declined to consider the municipality option? Are you familiar with that?
No, actually, I'm not familiar with that.
And you don't have any basis for suggesting that you've declined to work with municipalities?
No, I don't have any way to.
All right.
No.
1 second, please. Which of the two gentlemen would be able to talk about the logistics of integrating the vegetation management work with the distribution line rebuild work? Mr. Melendez, first of all, tell me if that question makes any sense to you.
It makes sense, and I would like to give you an answer of a recent job just to give you a sense of what are we doing at Luma.
Go ahead, sir.
So we are coordinating this work, and I'll use an example of transmission right away that we're clearing as part of that we're restoring the line of service as part of the priority stabilization plan has some vegetation that needed to be addressed. So we are ensuring that both jobs get done to the same level of quality and coordinated accordingly. It is part of our goal to be able to do that as an industry standard. I'll speak now in the context of my experience. Is the prudent thing to do is what all prudent utilities would do, that whenever you're doing a rebuild, if you have the opportunity to also address your vegetation, you should, because it provides you a more effective way to address both the work for rebuild and also the work for removing the hazard on its way. Occasionally, you have situations that might not be, conducive for other barriers or other situations, but that's the ultimate plan that we are combining two when it's most appropriate.
So more. Has there been any problem with, maybe the question was already answered in terms of the access problem. When you're simultaneously doing rebuild and vegetation management, your goal is to do them both at once. Is that what you're saying?
And that's what I'm trying to, what I'm conveying with your question is, and I'll repeat the question again, is when we're doing a distribution line rebuild or any rebuild work, would we include the vegetation controls? And the answer is yes, so long the same doesn't prevent us from, there's no other safety conditions, but we do combine the work because it provides access and is a more effective way to execute both initiatives.
Before I ask a last question of the witnesses, is there anybody else that has a, of the council, vegetation management question?
Mr. Hempling.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, would you like to go, sir?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Vasquez Melendez.
Only one question, and this is Attorney Pedro Vasquez on behalf of the APC. I can remember which of you guys testified regarding the debt, the 20 million debt owed to professional services. Does that debt correspond to the current fiscal year for services provided during this current fiscal year or previous?
That would currently fall within this fiscal year.
All right. So basically, and you say that the program has been stopped for 3 months and it will be continue on December. So we was stopped September, October.
It will continue. So it was a stop to the start of October. It will continue January 1st.
So by October, it already has been spent 20 millions in that. It was for this current fiscal year, right?
Yes, that is correct. And again, I just want to clarify again, not the full program has been stopped. Planned work has stopped. Reactive work hasn't.
Thank you very much.
Did I see another hand go up when I offered? And who is that, please, sir?
This is Attorney Josepo for ICSE. My
Okay,
question,
please.
if I may, my question is regarding when did LUMA first start approaching municipalities to the intent of having them contract in the vegetation management project?
I won't be able to recall the exact date, but we started, I'll give you a rough. It was in just prior to this fiscal year. So we're, 6 to 8 months ago, we would have started the discussions with them.
So is it fair to state that it's a new strategy by LUMA that was not in place in the first 3 years of operations?
Specifically with the elements that we're talking about with vegetation, yes.
Is there a stated reason that LUMA had internally for not doing that in the first place?
The opportunity that we see for the municipalities to really be effective for us is after the federal funding clearing is completed and helping maintain the systems afterwards. The problem going into that is the systems are so overgrown and vegetation growing up within the clearance distance of the line or intertwined in the lines that we need to have great control over that work to get that out of the lines. Once we have the system managed and cleared, now we can safely bring those municipal resources in to help with maintaining the system. So that was the drivers behind it.
So mainly it's a reason because capacity of the municipalities to actually do clearing vegetation under the federal programs?
No, and it's not the capacity. That it was more along the lines of the abilities to conduct the type of work that we needed done.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
I have a question.
1 second, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, okay. Kevin, this is Commissioner Torres. What's the constrained budget for the vegetation program?
For FY26, it's $75 million, and then it moves up to the $130 million in FY27, and then goes up by escalated from inflation.
So when you told me the 130 million, that was for fiscal year 27, the constrained budget. It's not the optimal budget.
So the optimal budget as FY26 starts at $130 million.
Okay, and who would pay for any increase of non-federal funded vegetation management projects?
That would be part of the rate increase. The dollars we're asking for is part of our rate application.
Okay, so it would be the ratepayers that would have to pay for this.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and let's say we do approve what LUMA's requested. What measures will you take that what's happening now will not occur, that you're stopping the projects, or you're not doing planning? What measures will you take that this will not occur? Because my concern is we have the ratepayers increase their amount of tariff, and then LUMA doesn't do the work because of the same situation that they're having now that PREPA or P3 or whoever's not sending the funds.
Again, yeah, the start stopping is an element of and caused by the actual cash flow issue. As long, we're taking extensive measures, and again, I'm not the person to talk about this, so I won't go deeply into the things that we're working to resolve those cash issues. With the funding that we've got, as long as the cash meets the budget, we will not be starting and stopping work. That's we have to get to the resolution of the root cause of the problems of the cash flow.
Okay, I just want to, in the future of these hearings, to someone respond to that question. To make sure, what measures do they have to have in place with all the parties to make sure that the ratepayers aren't paying an increase for a project that's not going to be done? Thank you.
Last question I have for you, gentlemen. Other than approving your rates that you're requesting, is there anything else you want to ask the commissioners to do to help you get this job done?
Obviously, yeah, you're right. The main element there of getting the funding that we need to be able to do the work that we need to do to get the system to where
Anything
it needs
else?
to be. The other question is exactly that. Is we're struggling right now being able to do that work because of the cash. So
Right.
That's the biggest
That's what
problem
I asked
we're
about.
facing.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Gonzalez, I'm going to take a break
Yes.
because we've got to, we kept people here for an hour and 35 minutes. So
I have something else, Mr. Empley. I'm sorry. Yeah.
please.
Mr. Burgermeister, you mentioned that you had stopped the maintenance work, but we're talking in context of vegetation management. Were you referring specifically or only or about vegetation management?
Yes, I was specifically talking about vegetation management, and again, just the planned elements of our work, not the reactive.
Okay, I understand that. And you also said that you would retake the maintenance starting January, right?
That's correct.
Because of cash constraints. But we know that Luma's accounts have not been funded for the past couple months up to the budgeted monthly budget amount. But we know that last month it was funded up to that amount. My question is, why are you saying that you're going to retake the work January instead of November and December because of having the funding up to the budgeted amount?
I respectfully object to the portion on the amount that could have been deposited in the accounts. It assumes a fact that is not in evidence in this case.
Well, can you answer the question in any way? Just answer what you can answer.
What I can answer there is that the debt that's accrued has happened over several months of underfunding and low cash flows into our accounts. It's no matter where the funding is landing at, if it does improve, we still have a large hole that we need to get out of, and it's going to take that time to be able to do it. And it's not only reducing the vegetation spend was not just about paying back the vegetation contractors. It was help with the larger scale debt to other vendors as well. Because what we have done is we do see vegetation management as one of our most important things to keep going. So even though we had months of underfunding, we kept the work at vegetation management going at the full budgeted amounts, even though we didn't have the cash to support it. So our other vendors suffered because of that. So the reduction for the 3 months is really about the larger picture, not just about vegetation. And that's what's needed to get us. And again, not a permanent solution. Gives us a step back up in getting vendors paid But if the problem is not resolved, we will just start bleeding again.
I have a follow-up question. I requested how much money do you need to start the program again? You said 20 million. But now you're saying that it still takes time to restart the program. If you receive $20 million, let's say next week, can the program start now and not have to wait until January? Or that's the question.
So yeah, the 20 million was specifically the debt to the vegetation contractors, and the overall debt is much larger than that. So $20 million would help us get the vegetation contractors paid, but not everybody else. So the bigger problem isn't resolved. We would still not be able to start until January and follow through with our plan because of the bigger picture that I just spoke about. And it would take what I mentioned about it was going to ramp up slowly. That's not so much about the dollars. That's about getting the resources back and being able to get them at work. So we see a staged approach to bringing the work back, but that's driven by getting the workforce back, not the dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to take a break for 15 minutes. We're going to come back exactly at 11 o'clock. Thank you for your attention this morning. This is about how it's going to go. And we'll look forward to seeing you back at 11 o'clock sharp. Thank you. Go off the record. Concerning the vegetation management contracts, Luma has marked them confidential, is my understanding. But my colleagues tell me that they were able to download them all from the website of, I've forgotten already now, the state agency. And so I would like to ask you over lunch to see whether there's any reason why we can't have the questioning on that topic in public session, unless you happen to know the answer now. I know that the exhibit itself is more than 500 pages, and we didn't go through every page. But do you know, can you enlighten us now, or do you want to leave that for the lunch break, ma'am?
If you give me a few minutes, I can confirm by memory. I think it's portions, limited portions were filed under seal, redacted in terms of signatures. I think that's the only redactions they have, but I would double check and let you know if you could basically use the full, most of the contents.
So let me restate that. So if our questions don't mention anybody's names, that's where we might be once you check. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, if that doesn't distract you from your other duties, let us know. Otherwise, we can deal with that after lunch.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Give me 1 second. So, Mr. Burgermeister, just two last questions that I have. The 51 lines. Remember?
Yes, I remember.
You done with the 51?
The 51 were again focused on structural repairs on the lines themselves, but they're not intended to be part of the vegetation as part of the priority stabilization plan. So yes, what the 51 lines were intended to be in there for are done. Yes.
Vegetation cleared from the 51?
No, the structural repairs that they were in the priority stabilization plan for.
Any progress on the vegetation clearance with respect to the 51?
Those are not in there as priority for vegetation. So the priority for vegetation in the system stabilization plan was the 115 kV and some select lower down on the list, some 38 kV, but the initial focus has been 115 kV.
Okay, but the answer to my question about vegetation clearance with respect to the 51 is okay. It wasn't in the PSP, and it's not, and the vegetation clearance has not occurred.
I won't be able to specifically say which lines have done for vegetation because that's not what their focus was on those 51.
Okay.
There may be some overlap there, is what I'm trying to say.
Concerning the, are you familiar with the PSP requirement concerning the distribution feeders? That you're supposed to have a plan in place to have the distribution feeders fixed up by 6/30/27. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with the requirement there. It's very broad in what its ask is for.
Right. What do you have on this topic? What has been done?
So the way we establish our distribution feeders is we work on a worst performing feeder criteria. So the ones that have the most problems and impacts to customers. And what we do with those feeders is we do what we call a coordinated planned outage, where we do an inspection of that feeder, find all the issues that are with it. We take one outage and we essentially blitz with crews, whether it could be vegetation, it can be substations, it can be our distribution guys, it can be low voltage, and we do as much work as we can on that feeder within that window and improve the state of that feeder.
Right. That's a general description of what you do. What have you done?
So we did last fiscal year, we did 24 worst performing feeders.
Okay. Last fiscal year. How about this fiscal year?
And the same plan was on the plans this year to do similar levels. Again, when we got back to the cash funding issues, we've had to keep higher priority items within the stabilization plan from a maintenance perspective moving forward. We had to direct O&M funds more to the transmission and substation. So we stopped doing the coordinated planned outages.
I'm just asking you, can you tell me how many you've done? Distribution?
0.
Sir?
0.
Okay. All right. Mr. Schiffman has some questions on vegetation management. Thank you for your assistance today. Mr. Schiffman.
First, just in terms of the overall budget that you're proposing, it's 125 million for the, what you characterize as the O&M type vegetation management. And you, I think in response to Mr. Hempling, you described that as basically.
One second, please.
One, two, three, four. Can you hear? In response to Mr. Hempling, you then talked about that O&M type activity was you would find problems on lines and you would go cut vegetation to address those problem areas. All right. And then I think in contrast on the federal side, you've got, depending on the numbers, but it seems like 133 million for the federal, which is a more extensive clearing of the entire right of way or entire path. So why is the federal portion not higher? What's the constraint that keeps more activity from happening on the federal side?
If I may, Pedro Melendez, and help you with the response in here. In the federal funding process, while a project could be obligated entirely, we only get 25% of the money access to those dollars. Those dollars then need to be reconciled after execution of work. So we're having a little bit of stop and go. So we're not able to ramp up in capacity. That impedes a little bit of, but it's more of a process and execution, how those dollars need to be accounted for and utilized.
Are you familiar with the expert report of Energy Bureau consultant Guimel Cortez concerning the formula that he described for a way to supplement federal funding? Are you familiar with that?
I don't know this, but by name, what we are saying, those are, I can't connect the dots. I'll have to look at the document to be able to affirmatively answer your question.
I want to ask you to be ready for a conversation when we have the federal funds panel. Are you ready? I want to make, you're on the federal funds panel, is that right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. What I would like you to prepare is in Mr. Cortez's report, in this last portion of it, he proposes a formula by which base rates would stand ready to fill gaps left from the FEMA process, such as you just described, so that the FEMA process was not a cause of stop and go. That's a formula that he has in his presentation, and I would like you to be prepared to discuss it as a potential solution to what you just described. Am I clear, sir?
And you are very clear, and I'll use the words, I have a recollection and haven't read that. I cannot affirmatively say that it's specifically Mr. Cortez's report, but I'll be ready for the FEMA panel to discuss this at length.
I just want to connect the 2 points. Yep. The point that you just made, that is a necessary, unavoidable consequence of the FEMA process. We have stop and go, whereas Mr. Cortez has a potential solution to that. That's what I want to make sure we can talk about. Are we clear?
Yes, we are. We will be.
Thank you, sir.
Just for the record, Luma, Mr. Andrew Smith filed rebuttal testimony to the Cortez report. He's the Luma representative, noted on your request to Mr. Melendez.
Thank you. I don't remember if it was Mr. Burgermeister or Mr. Melendez, but in response to another question from Mr. Hempling, you talked about, with respect to the FEMA funding, you talked about 16,000 miles and then said that so far you've applied for 5,000 miles for formulation and 1,300 miles have been obligated. What's the budget for that 1,300 miles? Is that the fiscal year 26 budget? Or is there more that needs to be authorized for or obligated for to hit the spending amount?
I'm going to rephrase the question, if I may. When you refer to the budget, are you talking about what we have in the filing for federal funds? Or I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, you've got 133 million for fiscal year 26, for example, under the federal funding. And so you've said you've gotten 1,300 miles obligated so far from FEMA. Does that cover the 133 million, or is there more that needs to be obligated?
I think what I'll respond to, we're looking to obligate as much as we can. I don't have the exact numbers top of mind or what we have obligated in regards to those numbers, but they're very relatively close, I could say. But we can look at some of our filings against some of what is obligated to confirm The challenge we'll continue facing is what I just made reference to, in which we do not have access to all the dollars.
Right, but you can seek reimbursement, I guess, on a monthly basis or something for something like vegetation management, right?
The reconciliation process in average takes over 100 days. It's not as, you can seek reimbursement, it's not as easy as say it's at 30 days, but the average we're seeing in reconciling, because we have to provide all invoices and all evidence of completion in accordance to scope, and that then has to be processed through the appropriate entities, and it takes at least 100 days. We're saying sometimes we see them better, sometimes we don't, but it's a lengthy process. We're expecting to have a stoppage of 3 to 4 months.
But then once that process has started, it's kind of ongoing, right? So
it repeats for every single one of the projects obligated. You reconcile against each of them 25%. Then you have another 25%, 25%, and you have various projects to actually reconcile, and then you get access to the funds to be able to execute. I think
right.
the comment
After that 3-month period,
I did.
so after that 3-month period, there would be rolling cash coming in from reimbursements, though, right?
That there will be another 25% available for that particular project. Yes.
And then the other question I had, just with respect to this, to the O&M, the cash flow issue you talk about for the O&M stuff right now, how is it decided that the vegetation management, given its importance, was the thing to get cut? Or you're cutting a range of programs because of the cash deficits?
Yeah, I think I did touch on this before, in that the vegetation management was sustained. Our cash flow problem started months ago, yet we maintained the vegetation at full budget levels, at full cash spend, even though we weren't being funded to our budget levels. What that did was cause problems to our other vendors. So they were suffering from that strategy, because we did place vegetation management as our top priority to keep moving forward. We got to the point that we were so far in debt that we had to make that final decision to pull them down as well, pull that lever, reduce their spend.
And then my recollection for like the first 3 operating years, Luma was getting about $50 million a year for vegetation management. Do you have similar issues, or was that, or what was done with in the previous years in terms of vegetation management activity?
Objection beyond the scope of the direct examination of the witness.
Ms. Mercado, thank you for that objection. You and I may be seeing the purpose of this hearing differently. We're here to learn as much as we can. No witness, when they filed their direct testimony, covered every aspect of their knowledge. If we ask a question that's of relevance to setting the rates, and a witness is capable of answering the question, I'm going to require the answer to the question. If the witness does not know the answer to the question, then it's no harm, no foul for asking the question, and that's the way we're going to proceed. I don't want any witness to go beyond what they know, but I'm not going to restrict this hearing to what you happen to have put in your direct testimony, which was your strategic choice, which may or may not be consistent with what the commissioners need to know. And that is my ruling, and I appreciate your objection. Please continue. Did you want the question repeated?
Please.
Yeah, for the previous budget years, since Luma has assumed operations, I guess the question is, did you have similar cash issues that stalled vegetation management? And if not, what activity was done? I think in your testimony, you talked about 7% of the lines have been cleared, which, is not that much. So just trying to understand what was done in those previous years.
Objection to the argumentative part that it was not much. Objection argumentative, the latter part of the question.
The first 3 years of operations, Luma had approximately a $50 million budget. We were being provided the cash to support that budget, and we executed that $50 million budget on target for the first 3 fiscal years. The 4th fiscal year, again, we had roughly a $50 million budget. Partway through that fiscal year, we started seeing the cash constraint issue. Now we made the choice to continue to drive forward and hold to budget on vegetation management because of the priority of it. So in fiscal year 25, we worked to budget. Although we didn't in the latter parts of the year have the cash to support it, now we in this fiscal year are feeling the impacts of that worse and had to make the final decision to lower the vegetation management expenses.
All right.
Spending. Yes.
Thank you. I think with the absence of these contract questions that we're going to discuss later, I think that concludes our vegetation management section.
Ms. Mercado, not meaning to rush you at all, were you able to obtain any information about the confidentiality treatment of the contracts? Or would you like to wait till after lunch?
Yeah, it would be appreciated if we wait until lunch.
Okay.
I do have two questions for Mr. Burgermeister on redirect.
Redirect, yeah. And as I said, we're going to try to finish off every subtopic. So this would be, thank you for that reminder, the time for redirect. Please continue, Ms. Mercado.
Mr. Burgermeister, recently the questionings by the panel from the Energy Bureau, you were asked about your familiarity with the stabilization plan. You remember that questioning?
Yes, I do.
And you were asked about the Energy Bureau requirements on distribution feeders. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And you mentioned that there was a broad requirement. You remember that testimony?
Yes, I do.
Could you explain what you meant by a broad requirement?
What I meant by the broad requirement was that it was not specific in that specific feeders needed to have specific work done on them. It was in a very general fashion about in stabilizing the distribution system, which is a very tall order. And what we were able to do is we can focus on those worst performing feeders that I spoke of.
In terms of, there's also being questioned to you on the island-wide vegetation clearing federally funded project. You remember the different questions posed to you?
Yes.
And you also testified as to maintenance work that may be performed after the vegetation clearing is done. You remember?
Yes.
Could you explain what that maintenance work that could be needed would be?
The maintenance work that follows the federal clearing is sustaining type work. The first top priority is within short order, typically within 3 months. We have to apply herbicide, which is not covered by the federal clearing. We have to cover that under O&M funding. So that's the top priority. Then what we've also have to do is within a year, do another inspection, and we will address fast growing species that we would be impacted at that point in time. We are targeting a full 4-year cycle. That's what the long-term vision of the vegetation maintenance program is based on a 4-year cycle. That doesn't mean that when we do a cycle treatment of a right-of-way that we don't look at it again for more years. We have to do a whole bunch of intermediary steps along the way to ensure that we're managing it as time. Species grow at different rates. We have to manage vines differently. We have to manage bamboo differently. Some of these activities may require quarterly inspections, and this is where I mentioned that the municipalities can be very valuable in helping with those very short-term inspections, dealing with things like vines and those types of things. So the maintenance program afterwards is very complex, has multiple steps in it, and they're going to vary from feeder to feeder depending on what species are an area of the island that those feeders are contained in. So it's and the stress there again is that program has to happen. We have to fund that program. We put at risk the federal funding if we do not follow behind.
Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to turn to the next topic on the agenda, which is entitled Transmission Facilities. So we're in topic 1B. And the main subtopics here are progress on the PSP, the NFC projects versus the federally funded projects. Remember that the next item on the agenda, integration of renewables, we're deferring to 9 o'clock on Friday morning. So I'll turn the questioning over to Mr. Schiffman.
Yes, thank you. This again would be for Mr. Melendez and Mr. Burgermeister. Related to the PSP projects, what I understood your testimony earlier was those weren't necessarily vegetation management issues, but more, I guess, component or equipment type issues. So can you describe just generally what conditions affected those lines and LUMA's process for identifying those initially?
Certainly, I can address that question for you, as Kevin Burgermeister. The 51 segments were not chosen on known problems. They were chosen because of their criticality to the system in the 38 kV system. And so what we did was we inspected the lines. Once we committed to those being important lines that we'll need to do maintenance on, we completed inspections, which involves visual, can be done from helicopter or the ground. We'll also do thermography is another critical point that finds hot spots on the line. So basically what we did from those inspections of thermography and visual inspections made up the work scope that needed to be done on each line. Could involve doing repairs on hotspots, which could be at jumper locations, could be at switches, insulator replacements, conductor replacements, pole replacements. So from those, we went through and did that work. So we have completed that initial work through of those 51 segments of transmission system. So that first through is complete. They are still our top priority lines, and we will continue to do inspections on them. Doing maintenance is an ongoing effort on the system, especially at the state and age that the system is right now. And we must keep going on those critical areas. We will continue to do those inspections and repairs on that 51 segments.
But the original set of activities that you had planned when you developed the performance plan, those have been completed. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
I wanted to go through just a few example lines that are in the line item budget in fiscal year 26, and just have you describe just generally, not deriving any numbers, but just describe generally how you came up with the budget for what was needed for those lines. So the first one would be line 2200. It's called Factor Sec to Barceloneta, TC 2200. It's got 2.3 million in the unconstrained budget and 2 million in the constrained budget under the pole replacements. So what's the process that you use to come up with what's needed for that line and the budget estimates?
This is Ferman.
Just a minute. Is it possible to reference that document in the record? I think I understand the one you mean, but it may help the witnesses have the document since you're talking about specifics. I think it should be you tell me.
Yeah, this is a spreadsheet. It's called LUMA EX 2.05 FY26 LTIP budget filing unconstrained.
Yeah, it's Exhibit 205, right? So would it be shown to the witness in their 205?
If the clerk can show Exhibit 205. But I'm going to guess, Mr. Burmeister, that there's going to be a general answer applicable to each of these lines. And the general question, if I understand Mr. Schiffman's question, is when you come up with a budget for a particular line, what are the considerations? And is Mr. Melendez going to answer that? If you wouldn't mind my being hearing examiner for one moment, we are managing a huge number of questions that have to get done by Monday at the end of the day so that we can get to the huge number of questions for the huge number of issues that remain. and and this is no criticism intended. I'm asking all witnesses to listen very carefully to the question. You don't always have to append some version of "we're doing the best we can." Everybody understands that, and so it saves time if you answer the question. Don't elaborate. Don't repeat yourself, and don't ever think that I'm trying to cut you off. But just think ahead about the question, and that's all I have to say. And let's get the everybody have the exhibit up. You have the.
Look at it as a transmission pole replacement on that line. We actually utilize actuals for the work that we have done so far. We consider the equipment and the conditions of the asset to understand what needs to be replaced, and consider how many structures, what are the repairs that need to be done, and then we apply what type of access, right? What other considerations in regards to access or a type of equipment to be able to establish the estimate. We utilize a standard tool, RS means, to be able to do our estimation. RS means, which provides us some of the details of the current labor cost, prevailing wages, and items that are really straight through from the industry to allow us to be as close as we can on these estimations.
Thank you. So the process to identify, say, on a given line segment, which poles need replacement, that's based on inspection or in some kind of an engineering analysis, or what is that process?
Great question. It's a condition-based assessment, right? We understand we're identifying because those are identified, and then we do an engineering analysis in the event that it's necessary to complement it.
So there's the engineering analysis says there's a structural deficit with a given pole or tower, and that's what triggers the picking that pole for replacement versus the one next to it, for example.
In regards to the type of pole and structure, we are making upgrades, right? We're not doing a like-for-like replacement, so it may require more than we're doing based on conditions, and ensuring that the structural integrity is maintained. We also need to ensure the soil and the conditions where it's going to be built, what type of work needs to be done. It's all contingent to the type of structure needs to be assembled, is how the actual estimate is developed. And recognizing that we're actually upgrading the system depending on the structure that it is to withstand 160-mile winds, or the type of structures in regards to their configuration. And that depends the type of structure we're replacing, what's in front, what's behind, and the scope continue to be managed that way.
And done based on, like, for targeted lines like the ones you're talking about that are critical, or like what % of the transmission lines that
area inspections, patrols, a significant portion of them. These particular ones related to the area stabilization plan have been inspected to determine the actual scope itself.
But there's other lines that haven't been inspected.
They have been significant structural towers themselves that are being assessed, but not all of them.
Do you have just like a rough % what's been inspected, what has not been inspected?
I don't have a rough percentage I wouldn't be able to do, but what we have done is with an example that I gave you. We got 39,000 poles that we already identified that are in critical conditions. We believe as we're doing maintenance, we'll continue identifying about 3,000 more every time we inspect more lines, because as the consistent continue aging and the conditions of this weather conditions continue affecting the infrastructure, we'll be able to continue identifying that. That's pretty much a rate that we have seen since we first completed our first assessment of these the entire infrastructure.
Like a sampling type rate based on what you've learned from the systems?
That's correct, sir.
So for the difference between the budget, the constrained budget and the unconstrained budget for pole replacement specifically, is the inspection process the same and there's just a different number of poles that would get replaced, or is there a different level of activity planned on the inspection side in the unconstrained budget versus the constrained budget?
The answer is it's the same process for identifying them. The unconstrained versus constrained, and I'll call it the optimal budget just to simplify we have completed the optimal budget, which is what is identified as necessary. The actual cutback to constrained is a reduction on some of the work while maintaining prioritization of critical conditions that exist out there in mind as we'll continue developing that budget. But the process for identify them, which is
The component, all the different cost components that go into this. So my understanding is there would be, an engineering cost, there would be, I guess an owner engineer cost, which I think you typically refer to as Luma Works. There would be, then the actual pole itself. How are those budget estimates developed with the different cost components?
That's a great question. Once an engineering is, let's start with the premises that we identified the scope of work and we do the engineering work. We actually have engineering firms and we understand based on other projects how much it's costing us to do that engineering and analysis as part of the estimation. In addition to that, we have actual costs because we do have a lot of material on hand. So we understand what is the actual cost of those projects from a totality and what else we'll need to acquire to understand what the market is. And also we have several contracts in place in which we actually execute the work. So we have a pretty good idea of our execution rate right now and the actual projections that we're having, plus our stretch goals from a budgetary perspective as execution.
So the budget that Luma has proposed was developed based on those factors. I think the testimony characterizes it as bottoms up. So it's this, we need this many of this type poles. This is the cost. This is the engineering cost. That level of detail is available.
That's correct. It's part of the thousands of projects that we have as we're doing that analysis, and we actually utilize for future years as we're talking about long-term investment plan. We'll make sure we're that consistent in regards to what we're doing and ensure that the budget is aligned with it. But it's actually correct. We're doing a buttons-up approach.
And the cost for a particular pole or type of tower that you're including in the budget, is that closely tied to RS means, or there's a discrepancy between that and the RS means estimate?
I'm going to repeat the question, make sure I understand. It's basically from an actual project execution, or you're talking about from a budgetary execute perspective?
I guess it's both. I mean, you've got your actual cost and you've got an RS means estimate, which I understand like FEMA would use, for example. And then I assume based on the experience you've had with actual, Luma's got a view on, is that RS mean estimate accurate? Is it understated? If it's understated, what's a rough percentage of the understatement?
It is a great question because indeed, right, when you are doing a budgetary estimation, a project that has not been probably engineered or has not been executed, there might be conditions that you are determining either at risk, right? From a project management perspective, we utilize those controls, but they have been consistently within what we have because we have done significant amount of them, particularly in polling replacements. We have done over 20,000 of them. So we understand what the rhythm will be, the terrains that we're dealing with, the access that was discussed from vegetation, all these things we have enough experience to be able to understand it until we do site conditions. Site conditions may vary, but that's within what we have been estimating.
So all of that learning is basically built into this budget.
That is correct. All that learning is built into this budget.
Roger, can I ask a question while you go to the next question?
Of course, yes.
This is Commissioner Torres. What's the amount that you're asking the ratepayers to pay for pole replacement in the constrained budget and the optimal budget?
I'll appreciate we get directly specific one section. I have a lot of testimony I have provided, so I cannot cite the specific number right now. If we can go to a specific section, you're making reference to my testimony.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have a lot. I have a lot of content.
Is the answer in your testimony? All right.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Is the actual question?
I just want to know what amount is Luma requesting on the constrained budget and the optimal budget for the pole replacement that they're asking the ratepayers to.
It's one of the
pay.
programs.
For the transmission pole replacement program?
Mhm.
Yes. I guess if we show him Exhibit 5, if it's possible, that's his pre-file testimony. Exhibit 5. And maybe also Exhibit 205 that you have in front of you. So
I don't. I'm counting on it to be on the screen.
seem to be there.
Yes, that is.
And it says
Yes, the only ask, as you're doing this, could you please verify with its optimal versus constrained what you're reading?
What
I have it on the
PDF
screen. If I
page
put
are
my,
you on?
yes, it's $14 million for FY26. What is called PVU T13 transmission priority pole replacement, 43 for 27, 67 for 28.
Okay, and I know the federal funding is also, there's federal funds for pole replacements.
Yes, there is a program brief that also accounts for federal funds in this. So the majority of these dollars are associated with critical conditions that we waiting for an obligation to be able to execute will probably pose a risk and a reliability risk. So that's why we're balancing this with the FEMA funds.
Okay, but the 14 million, that's what you need from the ratepayers in the constrained budget.
For this fiscal year, that is correct.
Okay, and the optimal budget, how much is it?
That
Can answer both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
that is the actual optimal, if I'm not mistaken, on, you scroll down a little bit so I make sure this is the right section too. Yeah, that's correct. That is correct. I just wanted to see it on the screen, but yes, I am answering that question and what you're seeing on that table.
So what's the constrained budget then?
Table 11.
Page 58 of Exhibit 5.
But answering your question directly, what we are requesting from ratepayers is the optimal.
Which is the 14 million. And the constrained budget is 12.5, they tell
Yes.
me. Okay, what would be the impact of not approving the optimal budget and doing just a constrained budget? How would the citizens be impacted by that, if any?
So I'll depart from the premises of the needs of the system. In regards to, there is a lot of on-site conditions and reliability risk that exist on these poles that need to be replaced. So the risk would be that we'll have failures on these, but the majority of them are imminent in that condition. You will have to restore them, or there's going to be outages associated with failures of these poles.
Okay, no more questions.
Just following up on Commissioner Torres' question, do I understand that some of these could be eligible for federal funding, but you're trying to get a jump start on that process? That's why you're proposing ratepayer funding?
We're proposing ratepayers funding because of the imminent need. Yes, there could be some of these poles that could actually be incorporated into the FEMA process. Our first go-to is the FEMA process. And then prioritize it based on urgency of the need of the business, of the system.
But for a given pole, how do you decide to take it out of the FEMA process and use ratepayer funding?
is a twofold. I'll provide a couple responses on this. One is what stage in the process is this particular obligation process? Thank you. In the FEMA process, number one, and number two is the imminent need, right? If there actually is an at-risk condition that could cause either cascaded outages. When we're talking about transmission infrastructure, we're talking about large-scale events, and that's basically one of the main drivers for ensuring we have proactive replacements, which allows us to utilize dollars more effectively.
So just as I guess a hypothetical, so LUMA's done an analysis pole by pole or line segment by line segment and concluded that there's an imminent condition or risk of failure, say on this segment, and the FEMA process would be too slow to make that pole replacement within the time that you think it might fail. And those are the poles that are targeted for ratepayer funding in this budget. Is that what I'm understanding?
Your understanding is correct. Other than want to add, and we do a technical analysis. It's not just what we believe. It's actually an assessment that is done as described of what it takes to determine the actual cost to ensure that the pole conditions are understood and the replacement and the cost.
Is there anywhere in the filing that, or in any of the numerous ROI responses that we could understand more about that process?
No, I thank you. I'm trying to go through all the responses that we had given to see if I could respond accurately. I can't respond accurately because I have answered a significant amount of. Thank you for.
I'm just curious because this is the first that I recall hearing about this process, and that was the way that the ratepayer funded pole replacement budget was determined.
We do have some narrative on, I'll call it the rationale that goes into it. I'm just describing it here.
I understand. That's what we're trying to get, is to get an understanding of your budget. And so, and then I assume there's also some quantity of those poles that wouldn't be eligible for federal funding, or is it all just a timing question?
That is correct.
And so you've done that assessment as well. And
it's part of the analysis.
going through similar types of questions on, we just talked about pole replacement on the transmission side. For the transmission line rebuild, what's LUMA's process for determining whether a particular line segment needs rebuilding as opposed to, targeted pole replacement?
The conditions of the line, the ampacity of the necessary for conductors, the conductors that is there, the extent of the end-to-end, right? If you only have to replace several poles, because there are transmission lines that do have steel structures on them, as an example. So we will look for those portions that wouldn't actually have that we need to replace the poles. But in cases that actually is end-to-end, the conditions of the assets lead us there, the criticality of it, all the hardware, and also the capacity that line is carrying today based on the records that we have, what type of conductor versus the loadability and any other studies that determine we have voltage issues. Those are the kind of, based on studies, this line needs to be rebuilt. Also, during Hurricane Maria, there were several lines that were significantly destroyed. As a result of that, rebuild is probably better than trying to do a minor repair.
And so when in the budget, when you say rebuild, does that include a range of activities? Like it could include reconductoring, it includes, complete pole and wire replacement, or what's the kind of gradation of projects that are implicit in that category?
If I understand your question, regards with this scope that is included on yes, it would include either reconductoring, it would include increasing the size of the ampacity of that particular line to be able to allow more interconnectivity in the system. All that is studied through an analysis at the beginning to determine what's the best value for that particular project.
And assessing the need for a rebuild is based on again, engineering analysis, or it's based on both engineering analysis and you're also running, power flow studies and dynamic studies to understand, likelihood of outage or the impact of outage on the system, or just could you give a little bit of more context in terms of what that whole process is?
Absolutely. The actual process is the second part you just stated, and doing a power system analysis, flow analysis, identifying what I call voltage violations, which means we have a specific operability conditions you have to operate the system by that get assessed entirely. That is going to lead into, okay, which areas we're having congestions issues. It may lead to which areas need reconductoring because of the existing configuration of the system versus the future configurations on the system, and then go through that from a planning perspective, what are the needs, and then go through then match it with the asset conditions, and between the two of them, you then determine what is the best approach to take on a particular project.
And then on the question again of federal funding, what's the process that you used for the transmission rebuild again to determine, which of these segments would be eligible for the federal funding or put into the federal funding process versus what's in the ratepayer funded budget for this case?
As I mentioned in your previous questions, in addition to doing that, we also start identifying any alternatives from a hazard mitigations that may exist that may be better off in utilizing some of the hazard mitigation dollars to, as an example, on the ground in a segment. I'll just give you an example of that, which is additional cost is part of, as an example of what we would do to assess how we can best use federal funds. Also, the association of that particular rebuild with the actual grant that is associated with Maria and Irma, or even Fiona, and as an example, has to be interplayed as to why we're actually making the repairs or the replacement itself.
Some of these line segments, is there an allocation of federal versus non-federal funding on a given line segment?
It's a great question. I can't speak to any particular case, but in the event that wouldn't happen, we will actually optimize that. That's one of the synergies that we seek when we're utilizing non-federal capital in coupled with the federal funds to maximize the value to ensure that as we are executing the work, we're effectively using both coupled and do it at once.
But can you walk through an example of how that would work for a particular line segment? Like what goes into the allocation, and why is it that FEMA would fund part of it and not the whole thing?
I'll start with saying I'm going to use an example just to help you with understand.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say that a transmission line entirely has various segments, and you have a segment that is wood poles, and then you identify that was impacted by Maria, and those entire line will have to be rebuilt. The next segment of the line wasn't impacted by Maria, but yet we realize that the conditions of those poles or that condition of that switch or the interplay actually needs to be replaced because it will actually benefit ultimately the level of the grid. So we will connect both projects, and they will both be individually funded, but yet executed in conjunction. And that will be an example of what would it be maximizing that execution, that particular point. And we have situations in the system where we do have good quality structures that have been built, and those will stay. And we will make minor repairs or be able to upgrade insulators. That will be enough federal capital because it's not related to the event. So we utilize some of those details from an engineering, use that judgment to be able to maximize the use of both.
And for this particular budget, LUMA's gone through that exercise for all of the projects that are in the budget, or is there some level of estimation that's implicit in the budget?
In regards to transmission line replacement or in general?
Right now, transmission line rebuilding projects.
And the answer is yes.
You have gone
For
through that process.
transmission, yes, that's how we have identified the allocation. I also will add to what I'm saying is that the criticality we mentioned earlier in regards to the obligation process also interplays when you have critical lines that need to be rebuilt from a stabilization of the system or flow. We also have that part of the decision making is how promptly we do need to make this repair to prevent major outages or interruptions to the system also plays in the equation.
So there is some segment of the ratepayer funded budget that has that same issue where the project is being funded by ratepayers under your proposal because the FEMA process would be too slow to get the repair done prior to a likely failure.
I'll seek, yes, I seek is a balance and also understanding whether or not it's eligible.
And do you have any kind of a percentage breakdown of what percent of the budget might be affected in that way or no?
I at this point I cannot give you percentage base because it will depend on the type of project. But what I could say is within the optimal budget that we are submitting, we're ensuring we cover as much as we can. And it's a multi-year process, right? From a transmission perspective, transmission projects take a long time to be able to execute plan, particularly transmission line rebuilds. They're not as easy. It's not, sometimes you cannot do it within one calendar year. So there's a little bit of interplay on how we will actually maximize that utilization of funds when we're actually doing this. That's why it's a little hard to be able to give you a quantification because these are programmatic and how we are executing the work.
Okay. And for estimating the specific cost of a particular, you're rebuilding a particular line segment, you go through the same type of process, RS means looking at historical data, or is this based on, these are bigger projects and I assume you're using contractors, you're going out for EPC bids, or what's the process for estimating the cost to rebuild the transmission line segment?
The method of delivery, which is the last part that you mentioned about the EPC, I want to answer that question last. I just want to focus on what the process we're going through. It will be the same, similar. One of the challenges in determination from a FEMA perspective has to do with the environmental impact when you're rebuilding a line. That does actually causes a little bit more of takes longer from a transmission. Having done this for most of my career, I could say that is a longer process. So planning for that and ensuring resources as part of the activities we do. But in general, the part of how to execute it will be in a project by project basis for transmission in particular.
So is Luma itself identifying the line segments that need to get rebuilt, or are contractors doing that as well?
No, that is done by Luma. That's done by Luma.
And then at what point does the contractor come into it? You basically, just give an example again for a particular line segment. How does that process work? And then also, how do the costs from that process, how are they reflected in this particular budget?
When we talk about contractors, I'm going to speak in two terms. First is the design firm, and then the contractor for execution of the work.
Right.
In the context of the design firm, as they have the experience to be able to estimate and help us to calculate that, and we do that at the front end with them. Then the contractor will go through a awarding process depending on the type of contract structure that is used. There are different mechanisms, so we have folks that will talk about that piece, and then we'll select the contractor, and then we'll actually provide and award what is going to cost to be able to do that execution based on what we have originally estimated.
So you talked about it being a long process. So for example, for the fiscal year 26 budget, for the specific projects that are listed in the budget, are those in the contracting phase in terms of the cost from that, so that those are coming from, say, an EPC contract, the cost estimates? Or how are those determined? Because that work presumably is getting done fiscal year 26. So that project, I guess, was started previously. Is that an accurate understanding?
Your understanding?
Yeah, an objection. So the form of the question is vague, referencing projects generally.
I can refer to a specific project if you prefer.
Well, which types of projects at least?
These are line rebuild projects.
So for a transmission, I was going to start there. Just make sure for a transmission line rebuild project.
Yes.
There are different phases, and if you notice, right there, the budget allows us to be able to start with the engineering phases. We have engineering phases started, and then we will go into the execution as mentioned, right? There are multiple projects. I want to go back. You mentioned a couple of times the word EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction, as one of the delivery methods. Yes, that's one of the delivery methods that could be employed, but we also have other delivery methods on these process, which is engineering, walk for bid, and execute, then the construction, which is different than EPC, which is probably a little bit more comprehensive.
And none of the questions The question is, so just as an example, if you go to the non-federal capital worksheet within that spreadsheet, and then under transmission line rebuild, for example, line 128 on that worksheet, there's.
Do you have that?
It's not up yet.
There's nothing none of the questions I have are referring to any redacted data.
Sorry?
Oh.
I can see the document. I cannot see the data, but I can see the document.
Right, yes.
You don't get the specific data. What I'm trying to get at is, just as an example, there's line 40,000, it looks like. And in fiscal year 26, there's a specific budget number. For fiscal year 27, 28, there's no specific budget number. So if this is a project that, if this is a project, this one, for example, has $287,500 cost estimate. Those are expenditures, I assume, that are going to get incurred in fiscal year 26. So does that mean that this project, to go through the process you talked about, or, if we picked a bigger project that was more involved, these are the costs in 26. So that would be an actual construction, or is this like an engineering cost for a particular line? And then, so I can answer that question first, I guess.
Let me, the level of specificity on the question is a little difficult for me to give you the answer you're looking for. I just want to be sincere. So I will have to look a little bit more what has happened prior to what we're submitting to be able to speak with certainty on what that line item is and a little bit more about that particular project. But to help, probably you're coming from a line of questions. If a project is designed and we have the material and we're putting in a budget for construction, then that line item will be for construction. If the project has a design with the intent of accelerating a particular process because we're moving or coupling that particular work with other work, then that will be then incorporated in the detailed scope of the work, which is not in this line. That's why I'm trying to see if I can help.
Yeah, what I'm really trying to understand is for all of in this particular spreadsheet, which I think ties to the budget filing, if you aggregate, these costs by category or by program brief category, there's specific budget estimates for fiscal year 26, but then I think almost exclusively there's no budget estimate for a particular name project in fiscal year 27 or fiscal year 28. And instead, the budget numbers are in some broader categories. So I'm trying to understand this phasing of projects and the fact that they're not all getting done within a particular fiscal year with the budget that's been presented to us.
Yeah. So Without not having the specific, I'll start. You may have a particular program in which we are allocating funds for the engineering of various projects. And then in future years, we will actually have to reassess where the project design, allocation, and cost. I cannot speak specifically to the items, but just to give you a conceptual what you may see as a line item in there. And in some cases, if the project is being executed and we just need the final dollars on the particular year, like this year as an example.
Project execution doesn't fit neatly into calendar year
No,
perfection.
That's correct.
It's reality.
It's the reality. Yeah.
I understand that. The part I'm having difficulty understanding is that the budget that you presented doesn't show year by year changes for a particular project. It shows if it's a named project, there's a specific quantity for fiscal year 26. Then, for as an example, transmission line rebuild, the cost for fiscal year 27 in aggregate goes up substantially, and again in fiscal year 28. But there's nothing changes on any named project. All those cost increases come into general cost categories. That's what I'm trying to understand, is that transition from fiscal year 26 to 27 to 28 not being tied to what seems to be a specific project.
I object to the first portion of the question that was argumentative.
I'm not trying.
Just answer it.
Yeah.
This is what I understand is going on, and I'm probably the most ignorant person in the room. You have a situation where you have line-specific information for fiscal year 26. And then when it goes to future years, you're back to generalizing totals for a bigger category. And as I understand it, the reason is you're not going to be able to predict, you're not going to be able to connect a month with a line beyond a certain period of time in which you can see. Is that it?
That is twofold. That is one part. And the second part is we are not listing every project that we have in the budget because it's thousands of them. So I could have an appreciation to your question. If there isn't a specific line mentioned here from a project execution, it does have a specific budget designated. When we're actually going to future years, to a very point, we cannot line up all these schedules because we don't have certainty on funding availability, when things are going to happen, a programmatic approach. When the aggregate, we do have enough projects in our portfolio in which we'll actually utilize the transmission funds appropriately for the priority work that has been outlined in each one of those years.
So the closer we get to the date of execution, the more specific we can be to match dollars with lines.
That is correct. At the same time, the same will hold true in project management expertise is the higher the accuracy of the actual estimate as you get closer to design phases, construction phases, and execution phases throughout.
If the Energy Bureau required you long in advance to be line specific, it would be false precision.
That is, it will be correct to assume what you're just saying is holds true because we are talking about point in time. And with depending on the details of the information of a particular project, the details will vary the position.
Can I ask a question? Yes, can we go to page 61, table 11 of Exhibit 5, Luma Exhibit 5? It's the same table that we looked at for the polls. Table 5 is the optimal budget, and table 11 is the constrained budget. Look. Pedro Ingeniero Martinez, my line of questioning is how much are we asking the ratepayers to pay and why, and the difference and the benefits that they'll get from the constrained budget to approve the optimal budget. That's my line of thought and my latest questioning. On table 11, is that table 11 or table 5? I can't see. Table 11. Okay, you have a constrained budget for fiscal year 26, 27, 28. On the total, 217 for 26 369 and 462 for 2028. And then you have reduction. Is that reduction from what you expected the optimal budget to be? So the optimal would be 217 plus 108?
Correct.
Okay, so there's a significant amount of money, almost 100 million in fiscal year 26 and 260 million for fiscal year 2028 that you want the ratepayers to pay. What would the ratepayers lose if we only approve the constrained budget? Or the benefits?
That's up. Absolutely. No, absolutely. So they're going to depart from the premises of our current state in regards to reliability. Our customers are experiencing an average of 8 events per year. And the duration in average from a system is about 24 hours. So in order to actually have significant improvements on the duration and the frequency of the events that are happening in the system, there needs to be an injection of capital investments. Less than optimal, you will receive less than optimal results. So the ability for our ability to be able to execute the projects that are necessary in the next 3 years will be compromised, and then you will have less benefits overall in regards to the frequency of outages and the duration of the outages across the entire system.
Okay, well, that part's pretty obvious. I think we all know that if we don't get optimal, we don't get optimal. Is there any way to translate what you're saying into specifics about number of interruptions or duration of interruptions?
I'll answer I did answer that in part of my testimony. I don't have it memorized, but I will say that the system is degraded about 5%, which is the degradation of the system is a 5% degradation. So if we do not stop the degradation, we're not going to be able to improve the 2 elements that I just talked about.
Okay.
So we're slowing down the opportunity improvement. Let's also recognize that investments on the system are exponential, not linear. So the sooner you make bigger investments, the sooner you're going to be able to improve the system reliability. So
explain that concept of exponential. I hadn't heard that term in a way that was actually meant mathematically rather than exaggeratedly, but I think you meant it mathematically. Could you explain that, please?
Trying to from an illustrative perspective, is essentially putting aside stabilization of the system if we have major components that need to be replaced. And I will use an example, if I may, to illustrate what I'm referring to. We have out-of-service equipment at a substation, and I'll use my hands with it. You got 2 feeders, right? Current condition of the system, 2,500 customers, 2,500 customers. Out-of-service equipment on my left, I'm going to move it out all of them here because this is broken. Every time we have an outage, you have 5,000 customers out of service.
Okay.
Plus, you are degrading this system right now because you are actually having my right arm holding 5,000 customers, now 2,500. That is the state of the system. So it's degrading faster, so the likelihood of the failure of my right arm is going to be higher, right? That degradation will stop by making investments and repairing all the out-of-service equipment. So I have 2 hands, 2,500 pounds in each one of them, and I'll be able to then make that improvement. And the improvement is not linear; it's exponential mathematically, right? And oversimplifying it, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be respectful, but that is what you're seeing is you are able to make significant improvements on the system, particularly on major equipment that is either out of service or it's actually failing rapidly in the entire system. The more we actually attack those bigger pieces, the faster you're going to see at the back end the improvement in reliability for our customers.
It's a lever effect.
You got it, sir.
Yeah.
This is Commissioner.
Not quite exponential, but it's a lever effect.
That's understood. I would use that in the context of not purely mathematical, but I just want to illustrate the benefits of.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Torres again. I'm having a hard time because the system right now, it's not working. Everyone's complaining that they don't have a good system, and it's really hard. How would you explain to the ratepayers? Give me $200 million this year, and what's going to happen to them? Will they see no outages? Will they see no major outages or even outages at their house? What do they expect when we give them this money?
So
will they see nothing?
I will object to the first portion, hearsay and argumentative. first portion of the question.
So I- Yeah, yes, two questions. I'm going to rephrase one and then I'll answer and then the second one, if I may. First one, it has to do with what the benefit would look like for the investments dollars. It is, we have a system that is currently not as stable. Stable means every time we have an event, the system has the risk to actually have major regional outages on the island. The investments are going to help us have the redundancy in the system, so when the events do happen, they do not cause this major type of events. So that's one component. The second component is we'll begin with the needs of the system. The system is brittle and cannot sustain and not provide the resiliency that is needed for major events, such as wind, such as rain, some other things that were discussed today, because it's aging infrastructure itself. Those repairs will continue to provide some level of resiliency and reliability benefits. And over time, as the more we do, the more it's going to be seen. I provided in my testimony some of the what will be the actual percent benefit from 2024 to 2028 as a window of time, because reliability, you need to execute the work to see the benefit. And that might be able to help you a little bit. I don't have it memorized. You can see 8%, 10%. There's a range of benefits that the customers will see in each area when projects get executed, which is your second part. We'll see the benefit differently.
Did Lumen do a study in terms of FAV and safety, in terms of optimal versus constraint that we can measure Luma by, that the ratepayers are going to give $200 million and the safety and safety is going to go down so much?
It's part of the testimony.
It's,
But
can you mention what page?
But we'll find it.
Okay.
Can I just follow up on that for 1 second? But if we just focused on the immediate improvement in safety from the $200 million, we would be ignoring the entire levering effect that you and I saw, that you spoke about before. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That one cannot measure at a specific point in time the full benefit from an investment. One has to look at the larger passage of time in order to see the total improvement. Otherwise, one will, in other words, it's the job of the Energy Bureau and Luma to educate the customers that we are engaged in a long-term bringing back to health a system, and that at any point in time, there might not be a precise matching of benefit to cost that is satisfying to everybody, that one has to look at it over a longer period of time. That is my understanding of what you're trying to say, sir?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to try, we are going to complete the transmission line rebuild before lunch, which will occur within about 10 minutes, if everybody can last that long. Is that okay with everybody? I always try to give you a place to know it will be over. All right, Mr. Schiff.
Mr. Levy, I have a question. No, it's Commissioner Ramos. I believe I heard you mention a percentage of degradation. Am I correct that you say
that is correct?
Did you state a specific percentage?
Yes, it's between the 4 to 5% is what we're seeing in the system and the calculations that we made.
And how do you determine that percentage?
There's a regression. There's a regression view that you can have utilizing current data on where we have on the system and the improvements we're making, valuing the actual investments that we're making using statistical modeling on this. And out of that is what if you don't do it, right? You are projecting a benefit, and then if you pull back the benefit for a specific programs that we are executed on, you'll be able to see that the system will not stop. In addition to the amount of outages we're seeing and the uptick that we're seeing and the frequency and the duration of the events from a magnitude also is played out. Historical plus the analysis statistically using IEEE standards of evaluating safety and safety.
So is Luma, as part of the constrained budget or the optimal budget, is there a number that we could specify that would offset that degradation and perhaps have or what's the minimum, let me restate the question, what's the minimum amount that would be needed to be invested in the system to at least cancel that degradation or have a positive effect?
There's some pieces of my testimony that are probably best to answer your question. I cannot cite them all, but the optimal budget is a budget that would allow to actually combat that, plus to start making a positive movement in a very effective way. Less than that, all the way to constrained, is putting that at risk. When we are below the constrained budget itself, we're basically reducing the possibilities of getting those benefits moving forward. So where specifically to give you a number, I wouldn't be able to cite it right now because we will have to do the analysis is being done based on those two elements. The optimal budget is the one that is necessary to combat that degradation, put the dollars where it need to be prioritized based on the directions of the PREP, and being able to begin that acceleration process that I described earlier.
So with the constrained budget, we would remain in a state of degradation.
There is a possibility that that will be the case.
Okay, thank you.
Can we go to page 65? I believe that's where you mentioned the numbers of the SAIDI and SAFE, or at least the SAIDI. On line item 1,215, it says accounting for 4 to 5% actual degradation. And then you say SAIDI is likely to improve to 1,302 minutes as compared to as low as 1,268 minutes in the optimal budget. What right now, how much is the SAIDI in the system? Because I believe the SAIDI is 1,200 something right now.
I will have to defer answering the question of where we are right now. We provided a recent update to the PREP, if I'm not mistaken on this. I can't answer the specific, but the number in reference that you're looking in here, it uses 2024 as your starting point, as a reference point of the benefit from that point. It is worse if not at this time. I can't attest because I don't have it in front of me, but the idea is if you look at where we were in 2024 and you make these optimal investments in the next 3 years, the investments on the specific areas that are identified as providing the most value for reliability purposes, coupled with the female audit execution, will give you this benefit in seeing this benefit in 2028.
1,268 minutes. I just want to know what Luma has, what's the benefit that the ratepayer is going to see? Because if they're going to keep on having interruptions regardless, then I just don't know how to explain to them why they should increase their rates to keep on seeing, because our target of SAIDI and SAFE is not 1,268 minutes. It's much, much less.
Understood.
We compare to the standards of the US at least.
Yes, I agree with your statement.
Is there any more that you can answer to what you've said so far? To the question, how can we explain to the ratepayer what they're getting for the money? Is there any more that you can add?
Not at this time.
The optimal budget doesn't get you to industry standard either.
If I may answer your question with this, which is part of my testimony. Currently, our customers are experiencing around 8 events per year in average. They are experiencing almost 24 hours in duration per average.
Per event?
Exactly. I mean, when you look at the event and the duration for each one of them, the industry, the lowest rank is 2.5. So they see 2.5. This is the worst performing utility in the mainland based on IEEE standards, which is part of my testimony. It takes about 6 hours. So we're talking about a significant delta between the lowest performing utilities in the mainland of 6 hours versus 24 hours in duration, and 2.5 events versus 8 events per year. I could understand the questioning that being asked of people. We have to invest in stabilizing the system, and we have to make significant improvements to the system. And in order to do that, we need the actual execution with it, with dollars.
Okay.
That's what I could share.
Okay. Let's finish up the transmission rebuild.
Just one follow-up though to Commissioner Torres's questions. The unconstrained budget too is a significant increase in non-federal spending for say transmission line rebuild compared to previous budgets, right?
That is correct.
I might foul this question up because, but you'll help me correct it. When we're talking about the $200 million that you've been referring to,
Each of those for, both, they have costs both for fiscal year 26 and 27 and 28. But again, for the transmission line rebuild category, there's a line item called transmission wildfire mitigation infrastructure hardening. Can you describe what kind of investments or what kind of expenditures are in that category?
Yes, I can.
Could you clarify that if you're referring a document? I didn't catch it.
I was gonna ask. The line of question was what you're referencing, but I could still answer your question if I may. Which is the wildfire mitigation was a direction that we received from the PAP to assess that risk and identifying a programmatic view into the potential risks that exist in the south and northwest portions of the island. As a result of that, we identified some projects, some areas that we will replace hardware, cover it with insulated materials, evaluate undergrounding as an alternative associated with it, replace wood pole with steel poles, which reduces the likelihood of initiated events from a wildfire perspective from the electric system. Those are some of the mitigating activities that we will use. Also investment on monitoring, because one thing is to fully mitigate it with engineering tools, but also being able to detect them when they're happening to provide some visibility as a bridge as we continue making investments. Another investment that is contemplated under that category.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mercado, I'm still on Exhibit 205 under the non-federal capital worksheet and under the category of transmission line rebuild. That's where these accounts are coming from.
Thank you. If it could be shown if you have further questions, if the document could be shown to the witnesses, just for clarity of the record.
I'm not referring to a number, I'm referring to cost categories. As part of the wildfire risk mitigation program, is LUMA looking at issues like public safety power shutoffs as one mitigation measure?
If you're making reference at that procedurally,
yes.
I think we have in want to answer that? I'm going to pass it on to the operations.
The simple answer, yes, we are evaluating the ability of that. One of the things we need is one of the things that Mr. Melendez already referred to. We need to be able to monitor the systems and the conditions out there. So we need to build that up first. But we have built the procedures behind the scenes to look shutting down the lines during critical times.
So that build up is the good automation investments, things of that sort?
Yes, automation would be required there, automation monitoring, also weather monitoring as well.
Similarly, there's an account in here called cost and capital invested included in transmission OOS, which I assume means out of service lines. Could you describe what's in that cost category?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, again, in this worksheet for general cost categories, not tied to specific projects, there's an account called cost and capital investments in transmission OOS lines. That's the account.
So essentially, it's out of service equipment.
Yeah, I assume it means out of service.
Sorry,
lines.
which tab?
Out of service equipment. That is
So
correct.
those are lines that are out of service, and these are the costs to restore those to service.
Sorry.
And I was going to ask the same thing. Is you're asking general categories? So it's a little difficult for me to answer specific.
This exhibit.
the same of mind, but that gives you a little sense of what those line categories are for.
But there's no budget in this spreadsheet. There's no budget for fiscal year 26, but then there's budget. I guess these lines are still going to be out of service in fiscal year 27 and 28. Is that accurate?
I think there's, if I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at, I think there are budgets on that line item in there.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So what exhibit are we looking at? 205?
I'm looking what's on the screen, if you don't mind.
Okay. All right. And what line item? Wait, you have that?
It's right there. It's on the screen, and I'm seeing dollars on all the row on the column. So I'm trying to understand which one doesn't have any dollars.
You go to the next question. One moment, please. Next question.
Yeah.
For the record, the screen is not showing the fiscal year for the witness. So I don't think it's able to fully to see.
That is correct. That's why I'm not. That is correct. And the answer is correct. There is no funds at this time for those out of service lines.
So why are those lines not going to be put in service in fiscal year 26, or expenditures incurred for putting them in service in? All right.
Yep. Understood. We have from a priority of work. If you see it again, oh, you took it out. There's twofold. First is we are utilizing some of the FEMA funds for some of the work, and the other one is as part of the plan. Some of these out of service lines are not all of them on their priority, so we're allocating funds for future years to be able to execute because there's a significant amount of them. I can't necessarily answer with more specificity because I don't have the list of projects in here to be able to ascertain the why.
I understand. Then my final question is similarly, another general account in this same worksheet is called transmission capacity upgrade new business. Could you?
Yeah.
So the question is, what kind of expenditures are in that cost category?
In the let's go to it if you don't mind, please. Can we go to that line?
It's line 140, Excel line 140. So it's just below the out of service line ones.
So whenever we have new businesses that are going to be installed, we do capacity assessment to understand, can we add this new customer? I'll use an example just to illustrate what that means. Say, have a new being built, and we actually have to do upgrades as a result of that impact. Some of the upgrades will be borne by the developer itself. Some of the other ones will be borne by Luma. Also, my team in the new business and services have to conduct studies and do also sign and seal endorsements and visits and projects. So we do have some costs of new connections from a capacity perspective that would be included in there from a labor perspective.
Those costs are on the transmission side, or those would be on the distribution side?
Depending on the type of project, we do have some customers are connected at the 38 kV, which is considered transmission here in Puerto Rico, in the context of budgeting perspective. So yes, there are some customers that will be covered under that.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions for this topic.
Second, colleagues. So what are your expectation is that we'll do substation distribution for the so colleagues, we're going to do a 1 hour lunch and see if that works. So you'll come back and you'll tell me it works, or you'll come back and tell me that you need 75 minutes. So we're going to try to find the information today. We're going to learn every day about how to do this. So we're going to try, not going to try, we're going to come back at 1:35. Good luck. Remember, security is like 75 seconds per person. You multiply that by the number of people in the room, it's a problem. So remember, try to do your best to come back. Number one, do I have everybody's attention? Number two, Ms. Mercado, thank you again for checking on the situation about contracts. And you'll let me know. I'll be back 5 minutes early. You'll let me know, or do you know something now?
No, I would.
Can I get
need-
everybody's attention, please? It's not seventh grade. And don't go running off to recess yet. Go.
We would like clarity. I think it's not marked as an exhibit for the bureau consultant, so I want to make sure the number of exhibit.
All right, would
if
you,
could give us the
Mr.
number?
Camacho, go visit with Mr. Camacho during the break and get this straightened out. If nobody minds, they're having an off-line conversation, so we know what we're doing. Also, if anybody has any procedural things they want to talk about, again, we will discuss them at the end of the day so the witnesses can go back to work. But try to be ready for that. And if anybody can brief me ahead of time without argument as to what these questions are, I'll try to be prepared. So I'll come back 15 minutes early and you can let me know what it is that we need to discuss. For example, there's an outstanding objection between OIPC and Luma, and I might want to spend 5 minutes without everybody else here because I might be able to resolve it without having to write yet another order. I'm trying to keep my orders to 1 per day now, as opposed to 3 or 4 per day. And I know you don't want to read more than that. So we'll try to get that worked out. Is there anything else people want? Well, if there's anything else, let me know 15 minutes before. I'll be back here at 1:20 and we'll talk about, what are we going to talk about, Sarah?
I think we'll be doing substation.
We will try to get through substation and distribution this afternoon. Okay, everybody?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We'll see you back. Thank you. We're adjourned for the morning.